engage the public now that this has been released, as well as see if you have any additional feedback, thoughts, or comments for us to deliberate on as we prepare for the rest of the planning process. As a quick reminder, our work aligns with the strategic plan in two fundamental areas. One is family and community engagement, specifically AIM 6 around district communication structures, as well as our community engagement, AIM 12. In addition, operational effectiveness is a core pillar of how we align to the strategic plan, specifically AIM 14 about differentiating resource allocation. You'll notice that 14.3, a subset of that AIM, really calls out the work of our entire department. And then AIM 19, how it is that we can support the transportation department as they continue to upgrade their processes. And as you know, and have become familiar, Board Policy 4150 does anchor the work of our assignment planning process, specifically the Section A that talks about the drawing of school attendance areas. There are 4 core pillars that are outlined in this portion of policy: student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. And we just like to remind everyone that they are not specifically ranked in any particular order, but all of these areas should be weighed and considered when recommendations are being made, and we'll make sure to point those out for you as we go through the recommendations. Recently we've started including this slide just to remind everybody what the policy definitions of these terms are, as they are common words that might have other definitions, but for policy, student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency are defined very specifically for us as staff. There's additional language included in this portion of the policy, and that's been included in the addendum for anybody who would like to grab that quickly without having to go to the full board policy website. So for today, as I mentioned, we'll start with some reviews, then we'll go into the recommendations. We'll talk very specifically about our timeline, get some feedback from you on parts of that, and then I'll just highlight what's in the addendum, but we will not go through the addendum. Calling this section the review and updates. Information in this section is a review of the work that has led us to today's recommendations, and you'll start to notice a little color palette, a green sort of almost sticker-like attachment at the top right corner of these slides. That means you have seen them in a previous work session or facilities committee meeting. And now I'm going to look to my partner. We're ready. All right. So the 2025 enrollment proposal website is now live. This website will contain all of the information that's being shared in today's presentation, along with additional resources to support families in understanding the recommendations, which includes FAQs, an address lookup tool, as well as links to various assignment planning process videos and other resources. The assignment planning website that we launched earlier this year will remain open, as it will be what I call a perpetual website that will live before, during, and after all of our enrollment plans and will continuously be updated. However, the 2025 enrollment proposal site will be a time-limited site that we use specifically to communicate information about this particular plan. Around December or January is when we tend to close it down, because all of the information becomes permanently part of our student assignment sites at that point. All right. So as we review our information that you've already seen in a couple of different formats, either through a facilities committee meeting or a work session, we just want to remind everyone that the enrollment planning process is part of a larger series of actions that get us to this point. It's not a standalone process. As you'll see here, we've tried to outline for families and community members that this really is a 6-step process that begins and kicks off each year with our annual enrollment forecast. So you saw this information in February, where we partner with several different entities to try to determine what we think the projected student enrollment will be for the district over time. As you can see, it gets revised every single year because developments change, residential patterns change, economic indicators change, birth rates change, and all of those get factored in as those new enrollment forecasts are prepared. At this time, we also then started taking that same enrollment forecast and trying to determine how that would be distributed throughout the district. So again, this is all information we've been reviewing since as early as February of this year. The next thing we do once we have that projection is we start to look very near term, and we say, what are our schools going to look like for the coming school year, the current 24-25 school year? And so as early as February, March timeframe, you'll get those projections again from our long-range planning department. And so again, just a quick review of what we were projecting. A reminder that the darker the red color, the more crowded the school was projected to be. If it's yellow, then it's kind of on target in that sweet spot around, I think it's 90 to 100%. And then if it's not shaded, then that means those base attendance areas are projected to be below or at that 90% mark. So this lets us know where we're seeing that crowding immediately, and then we'll get some updated numbers as we get past the 20th day head count. I'm looking to Marcella and I'm seeing her nod. So once we get through the 20th day head count, we'll get some updated reflections to show what the actual crowding is based on those numbers. But these were the projections that were shared with you in March. The next thing that we do is we continue to partner with our capital improvement planning team, or our CIP team, and make sure we know fully what's going on with renovations as well as new school construction. As you'll be reminded, this year we have 4 schools that we're preparing to open in 25, 26, and so that does have a significant impact on what recommendations will be included in this particular plan. In addition, we get information about delays in construction or the expanded capacity that might come from a renovation project. This year we have 2 of those. Bauckham Elementary and Fuquay Varina Middle have both had improvements done to their facilities that have allowed for them to have a greater capacity. After your meeting recently in August, there were some discussion about adjusting the schedules for Morrisville High School and Parkside Middle School, and so these reflect those approved changes. In addition to what right now is our best projection for the opening of these schools, which is a little bit different than what you've seen in previous presentations. I will call to your attention the asterisk that we put behind every single one of these schools to remind you that due to the volatility of the market, any scope changes or design and construction schedules, those things can have an impact on these, and so we will continuously update these with our partners as we know more about those projects. At this time, highlighted in orange, you're seeing the schools that we're projecting to open for 25-26. That includes 3 elementary schools and 1 high school. At the very top of the list, we just wanted to keep it on there. Woods Creek Elementary has officially opened for the 24-25 school year, and that was the last enrollment plan that you approved for a new school. And so that is fully operational. As you're looking at the color code here, just a friendly reminder that the light gray indicates the school will most likely be finished from a construction standpoint, but will be used for swing space for another school to be able to get a renovation completed. And then the darker gray area lets you know that that's the year that we project that school to open with its own unique attendance area and student population. We're projecting out to the 2030-31 timeframe based on the current approved capital improvement plan, and again, this will continuously roll and be updated throughout the fall and into the spring. So by the time I see you next year, it'll have a 31-32 line on it. Once we get through all those phases, we're really ready to start our preparation for the annual enrollment process. And so some of it is concurrent and some of it is in sequence. We start very top of mind with capturing and thoughts and ideas from our public. This is a shift in our practice that we've been employing over the last couple of cycles, where we go out into the community ahead of time and say, hey, we know a new school is going to be opening in your area. Let's talk now, ahead of time, before a draft plan is put together, and hear what's important to your community and what we need to be taking into consideration as we're developing the plans for those schools. In addition, we expanded this year and had a general conversation with anybody in the district who just wanted to talk about student assignment, and invited anybody from the public to join us for focus groups. So we're continuously trying to expand that spring effort to really bring the population in and the community in on these discussions early on, so that the draft that we bring you today will reflect the input that we've received from those sessions. Again, any information that you'd like to see from that first round of public engagement is actually hosted on that assignment planning site. And so if anyone's interested to see what we heard, what we learned from those families and those community members, they can go to that site to see that information. Again, a quick reminder, we had an increase in participation at these events over the ones that we held in the 23 timeframe. We had an increase of about 75% in the total in-person participants as well as virtual participants in those general sessions that we had towards the end. While we were in these sessions, we were really engaging them, as I mentioned earlier, in conversations that, what is it that district leadership needs to be aware of and take into consideration when developing these plans for new schools, as well as continuing to address the growth and crowding concerns that we have throughout the district. We went over these in June with you during a specific work session topic to talk about this, but I do want to highlight, one thing that was top of mind, really, regardless of age group, was traffic and congestion concerns. We heard very clearly that there are concerns about how long the commute patterns might be. If we're talking about high school, what the young drivers might experience as they potentially get their licenses and start driving themselves to school, as well as thinking about any kind of infrastructure improvements that are happening in various towns and communities. So just being mindful of that. We were asked to be very thoughtful and mindful about those types of impacts. I'll highlight stability and cohort continuity because that one comes up year over year over year. We hear from families, please give us the most stable assignments you possibly can, and please allow our students to travel together in cohort groups as they age forward as best as you can. We get that we're a multifaceted district. We get that we have 160,000 plus students and we're nearing 200 individual school sites, yet if from a family perspective, you can be mindful that we do want to have stable school assignments whenever possible. So we definitely factored that in. And we've gone over all of these in great detail, but just a reminder that the equity of academic programs was not just at the high school level. It certainly was a premier topic at the high school level. Will my students have access to AP curriculum at the new school? Will they be able to stay in the honors courses that they're in or the CTE courses that they're in? Will they have those extracurricular activities like band, chorus, athletics that they've grown accustomed to in their current school? But at the elementary level, will I have the same types of academic opportunities at the new elementary school that I have at my current elementary school? So this type of equity of academic programs was a sort of common topic that came up many times. A few more topics that came up as key takeaways from these spring public engagement events. Again, talking about assignment and transportation efficiency, our community is well aware of our bus driver shortage, and they're acting on that same sort of information, saying, hey, anything we can do to make it easier for kids to get to and from school, we as families would support as well. And then the consideration of existing community bonds really partners with that sort of cohort continuity, but it looks at it slightly differently and says, hey, if we're a community, if you can try not to split our community up into too many different schools, that would be much appreciated. The other thing that we do during this time is we open up various thought exchanges. We have individual thought exchanges so we can capture the ideas and thoughts and comments, concerns, questions from community members about those individual new schools that are coming on board. And you see we've already started having some early conversations about schools that aren't yet scheduled to open, like Hilltop Needmore Elementary and Parkside Middle. In addition, we have some general thought exchanges that we open up so that all the community can participate, even if they aren't in an area that's being impacted by the opening of a school. We saw various yet similar responses as to what we saw in the takeaways from those in-person events. This is just a quick review. I don't expect anyone to be able to read this, but the full representations of these are in that presentation that was shared with you in June. So all of that information is taken in along with all of the data points that I shared with you regarding the forecast, crowding, capital improvement plan, and we start to think, where do we go from here as planners? We need to take that information and think about, are there topics that we need to dig into a little bit deeper? Stability rules. We really need to think about the stability rules that will come with each enrollment plan and align those as best as possible to the desires and wants of community members as well as the operational needs of the district. And again, with that cohort continuity, where can we continue to look at things like feeder patterns and make improvements for families where it makes sense? The other thing that we did is we came to you as a board in a work session in May and said, hey, we've got an enrollment plan that we're working on. We've been engaging the public. We'd like to engage you. And you kind of gave us some guidance that said, yes, please let's make sure we're preparing for the opening of those 4 schools. Let's continue to address any of our capped or overcrowded schools wherever possible. And then let's continue to address our school choice options, specifically in the areas of reducing the high concentrations of poverty and promoting school integration and diversity, as well as improving operational efficiency by maximizing the use of our school facilities and improving transportation efficiency. And all of that leads us to today. So all of that work has been done leading up to today. But before we get into our specific recommendations, I wanted to just point out steps 5 and 6. At this point in the plan, we're not quite ready for steps 5 and 6 related to the 25-26 enrollment plan. However, the carryover from the 24-25 plan, step 5 and 6, does impact our work today. So I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that we do still have several capped schools throughout the district. In February, you took this up for a vote and consideration to determine which schools would need to remain capped or have their cap, still on the school. In addition, there are 2 schools on this list that have feeder pattern caps. They're noted with a little side note of FP. At this time, though, you were able to vote and to approve the removal of 3 caps. So at that same time, 3 caps were lifted off of Apex Elementary, Highcroft Elementary, and Mills Park Elementary. And that's the work you've been trying to do as a board, is to get to a point where families can have more stability by not being assigned to cap schools. The other thing that happened as the 24-25 plan was being implemented was that you had conversations about some of our underutilized schools and made some very specific decisions, tough as they were, to change the calendars of Pine Hollow Middle and Roseville Middle beginning in the 25-26 school year to convert them from multi-track year-round to traditional. That information does impact some of the recommendations that we have for you today. All right, so why we're here. The specific recommendations, including in this year's initial draft of the 25-26 school enrollment plan, we hope will show you that we've taken into consideration all of that information we've been collecting up to this point and all of the data that we've been analyzing and up until this point. And so what you'll see here through November is a constant discussion about what the recommendations should be for the 25-26 school year. And again, this is where we are. So steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be what carry us forward after today. You'll see this quite regularly, as I want to remind the public as well as you that these are the two best places to get information about assignment planning in the district. The top site is specific to this year's enrollment plan and will have all of the information directly related to the recommendations I'm going to share with you today. The assignment planning website is a perpetual site that will continue to exist and be available for families throughout time to understand the planning process here in the district. The first thing I want to share with you before we get into specific recommendations is an overview. You'll see that the list of schools on this slide, it seems long. The sending schools are on the left, meaning these schools have portions of their attendance area that are being recommended to be assigned to a different school or a new school. And the receiving schools are schools that are projected to receive attendance areas from those schools. In 3 cases, they are brand new schools. In 1 case, it's because it's a renovated campus that has expanded capacity. Others, it can be a little bit of a domino or cascading effect as we open these new schools, and others are to address those school choice options you asked us to continue to monitor. What I'd like to point out on this slide is how much of the county is not impacted. We are opening 3 elementary schools, and so there are some significant changes in those areas, but the remainder of the county will be unaffected by the current set of recommendations, at least from a base assignment standpoint. And so we just want to draw attention to that fact. At the middle school level, the vast majority of these recommendations are related to feeder pattern alignment associated with the changes that will be recommended at the elementary level. And then there's a handful that are addressing those school choice options you asked us to continue to look at. And then at the high school, of course, we have the new high school, Felton Grove High School, that's projected to open for 25-26. So the vast majority of recommendations in this year's plan at the high school level are specifically related to that or a cascade or domino effect because of the opening of that school. But there are 1 or 2 that are related more to those school choice options that we've been talking about. So to orient us, we'll start with the new schools and then any related assignment recommendations related to the opening of these new schools. I do want to give a special shout out to Shane Webster and the Facilities Design and Construction team for helping me get these school renderings, just to jazz up the presentation a little bit and give you an idea of what these schools are going to look like when they're complete, because if you drive by them now, they're not quite at this stage. They still have about a year of construction, or not quite a year of construction left to complete their facilities. Rexroad Elementary will be situated in our sort of southwestern area of the county. You can see it highlighted here with the orange circle, somewhat proximate to Sharon Harris Lake. As well as that sort of southern edge of our county. For this school, we are going to start from staff perspective with a recommendation that the school operate on a multi-track year-round calendar, which would give the school a capacity of 924 seats. Because of the location of this school, and if you noticed in the capital improvement plan, there are no other elementary schools scheduled to open in this area for the next, for the foreseeable future, and this is a high growth portion of our county. So as staff, from a financial stewardship perspective, we feel like it would make the most sense to get as much capacity out of the school as possible from the beginning. Specifically because of where it's located, the 2 current or existing elementary schools that would be most impacted or directly impacted by the opening of the school are Buckhorn Creek Elementary and Holly Grove Elementary. So here I do want to orient you a little bit to our color palette. Anywhere you see a blue title on these tables, that means if we were not to make any assignment changes to these schools, these are the projected crowding levels for these schools going into the 25-26 and 26-27 school year based on what we know from our current forecast and current enrollment data. When you start to see an orange header, that lets you know that would be the projected impact if you follow through with the recommendations we're making today. Because of the location of Rex Road, it does have the ability to impact, as I said, directly Holly Grove Elementary and Buckhorn Elementary, but there's some cascading or domino impacts we can sort of put into place, because you may be aware there are several CAP schools in this region. And so in an effort to sort of shift that assignment area around just a little bit to better use all of these facilities, we'll have some additional recommendations supporting the relief of Herbert Akins Road Elementary, Holly Ridge Elementary, Lincoln Heights, Magnet Elementary, and then just taking advantage of an opportunity to reduce the reliance on trailers at Holly Springs Elementary. So we'll start with Rex Road specifically. It's been a while since we've looked at these types of maps together, so we'll start with a quick overview. The map on the left will show you in color the current attendance areas for each of the existing schools. So in this example, the sort of orange area represents the existing Holly Grove Elementary base attendance area, and the dark green area represents the existing Buckhorn Creek Elementary attendance area. The hashed out or sort of X'd through section is the section we're proposing to change the assignment for. The map on the right will then show you, if you were to take the recommendations that we're making and approve all of them, these would be the new maps. So the bright green on the right would represent the new attendance area for Rex Road Elementary. The dark green, and I'll talk about Buckhorn in just a moment, would be the resulting attendance area for Buckhorn Creek Elementary, and the orange would be the new attendance area for Holly Grove Elementary. What you're seeing in the map on the right is also the impact of some of those cascades, so expanding Holly Grove Elementary's base attendance area to the east just a little bit, as well as the impact of the opening of Bowling Road. Because of the location of Buckhorn Creek's current attendance area, it's nestled between both Rex Road Elementary and Bowling Road Elementary, and is projected to be impacted by the opening of both schools. And we'll get into the details of each of them. On the right, you'll also see sort of a red outline remaining. That's just to help you remember what the original attendance area was for the school that's being impacted. And I think I've covered all of the different colors. Yes. The recommendations here for Rex Road are specifically being made to open a new school and utilize that facility. It's also, all of our recommendations for the new schools will have taken into consideration transportation efficiency in terms of routing and being able to get students on complementary routes. We're also, in this case, aligning calendar. Rex Road being projected to open as multi-track year-round. This whole area is currently assigned to Holly Grove Middle, which is a multi-track year-round school, so this would also provide some calendar continuity for some of the students that are currently at the traditional Buckhorn Elementary. And of course, we did reflect on student achievement and proximity in making the final recommendations here. This one's hard to read. For the public presentation that we'll do as a virtual session, we have many more animations at play that we're going to be able to use to help families understand this. But because of the density and the high growth nature of this region of the county, we do have the ability with the opening of Rex Road, as well as Bowling Road, to provide some relief to other schools in the area. There's 3 ovals on here. I'm going to start from the bottom and progress up. So the most southern of the circles that you see, that's in sort of elongated pattern. So I'll help in pointing this one here. The areas that are highlighted are currently portions of Herbert Akins Road Elementary base attendance area, and these portions of its attendance area are on the west side of I-55 or GV Alford Highway. And so the recommendation here is from a transportation efficiency standpoint, as well as utilizing the newly available capacity at both Holly Grove Elementary and Buckhorn Creek Elementary, would be to align them with those 2 campuses. You'll see a very small area towards the southern end of that suggested area right here. That's actually being recommended to come into Lincoln Heights Elementary, and that's for transportation efficiency from a routing perspective. It makes the most sense. And Lincoln Heights will be provided relief with Bowling Road, so we feel like the school could handle this small addition. This then will make Herbert Akins Road Elementary a little bit too small, because what you may or may not haven't highlighted Bowling Road yet, but there's an attendance area here. That's a part of Herbert Akins Road Elementary that will become part of Bowling Road with our current set of recommendations. So it's a little bit too much of a loss of students for Herbert Akins. So the idea would then be to relieve the capped Holly Ridge Elementary by taking a southern portion, so that would be the middle oval here. Maybe I should just expand it. The middle oval here, taking that portion that's on the southern edge of the Holly Ridge Elementary base attendance area that currently is already assigned to Herbert Akins Road Multi-Track Middle School. So this would be a K-8 calendar alignment for this community, as well as provide some relief to a CAP school. And then with that relief, might be a little bit too much, we want to take a portion of the Holly Springs Elementary area that's nestled right in the middle of the Holly Ridge Elementary area and align that to Holly Ridge to create what you see over here are as the two sort of shifted attendance areas for Holly Ridge and Holly Springs. We recognize and own, this is a lot of shifting and a lot of change in one region. And we recognize and own that if we can do this, we can stay away for a while, because this will address the projected growth in the area as well as provide stability for families long term. And we'll talk about our recommended stability rules to also add another layer of support for families if you feel comfortable moving forward with these recommendations. When we look at the orange now, this is that slide I was telling you about when you see the orange bar. So the orange lets us know that we're now looking at the projected impact. So if you were to move forward with that series of assignment recommendations for both Rex Road Elementary and the other associated, what I call cascading or domino impacts, you can see the projected change in enrollment for the schools. I will caution, this presumes that all students impacted take the new assignment. So anything for stability rules that would come in would change these numbers just a little bit. So and the actual final changes in enrollment are yet to be seen based on how families behave and choose when they look at their options for stability. As a reminder, Holly Springs Elementary on this list is currently sitting with about 280 seats worth of trailer capacity. So this puts us in a good position to start working toward removing some of the trailers on that campus over time.
Susan, can you repeat that, please?
280. I'm looking for a
14 capacity trailers and 2 non-capacity.
So there are 16 total trailers on campus, 14 of which are giving them roughly 280 seats in capacity, which is not the norm. That's not the planning standard for our elementary schools.
This is for Rex?
This is for Holly Springs Elementary. Which is why I call attention, just because of that 78% would still put them well over 100% of their core facility. But it does put us in a position where we could reduce our reliance on the trailers on that campus, which is another goal that you've given us in different meetings. You'll notice that the projected enrollment for Rex Road is around 50% in its first year, which is not abnormal for our elementary schools as we let the growth in the area build and add. So this reflects responding to community feedback that we not only assign existing students to the school, but we also assign new and developing residential areas to schools so that we can impact the fewest number of families possible and yet still operate in our schools and open them with a sufficient number of students to offer courses and counselors and all those kinds of things. While we're on this same slide, just a quick moment, you'll see some of the numbers in the projected columns have an asterisk beside them. That means this school is probably on a couple of different maps, and this total number reflects the sum total of all the recommendations included in this draft. So that number will be the same from slide to slide. Bowling Road Elementary is the next that we want to talk about, mostly because of its physical approximation to Rex Road Elementary. Again, it's on that southern edge of our county in the Fuquay area. And again, with our capital improvement plan, while Hilltop Meadmore is coming online in a year or so, it is one of the last elementary schools in this region. So as a result, we are also recommending that it open as a multi-track year-round with a capacity of 924 students. So I will call out the challenge here. The school is physically located on the same campus as our new Fuquay Marina Middle, which operates on our traditional calendar. And we're not making any recommendations to change the calendar of that school. So if you were to move forward with this recommendation, we want to own and recognize this would create a calendar mismatch on that site, but it would not be the only place in the county where a student is assigned to a year-round elementary school and a traditional middle school. But I don't want to act like that's not happening. I want to acknowledge that this recommendation does create that potential conflict. Because of what we had to do in this region to wait for Bowling Road, there are a lot of elementary schools projected to be impacted by the opening of this school. Buckhorn Creek Elementary, Fuquay Marina Elementary, Herbert Akins Road Elementary, Lincoln Heights Magnet Elementary, and South Lakes Elementary. Again, because this chart has a blue header that lets you know that this is what would happen at these schools from a projection standpoint if we made no assignment changes. And as you can see, several of them are very crowded, if not beyond crowded. So you'll notice that this map looks very similar in region and geography to the one we looked at for Rex because it's in that same sort of side of our county. However, Bowling Road is located here. And as you'll notice, there's a fragmented set of attendance areas in this region because of what we've had to do to manage the growth in the region while waiting for Bowling Road to open. So these purple areas represent existing portions of Fuquay-Varina Elementary that we're recommending become part of Bowling Road base. This light bluish green color is part of the current South Lakes Elementary base attendance area that we recommend becoming part of Bowling Road. This light green area is actually part of Herbert Akins Road Elementary base attendance area that we're recommending fold into and become part of Bowling. The yellow represents a portion of Lincoln Heights Elementary that we're recommending become part of Bowling Road. And then the darker green is that portion of Buckhorn that we sort of referenced earlier that we're recommending become part of Bowling Road Elementary. All of the cascading impacts were part of that other map, so this is just the focus on filling and building an attendance area for Bowling Road Elementary. This set of recommendations is specifically being made as it's a new school, needing to have an operating population, to help improve transportation efficiency by consolidating some of these transportation routes in these areas. Obviously, proximity and student achievement were factored into the considerations. And again, you'll see a mixture of existing and new developments being part of the recommended attendance area for the school. If you were to move forward with the recommendations as outlined in the previous map, then these are the relative projected impacts on the schools involved. Again, several of these were on the other slide, so this is just a sum total of the projected impacts for the schools. And it does presume that all kindergarten through fifth grade students that are impacted take the new assignment, and we know that through your stability rules, that may not actually be the case, but it lets us know what the magnitude could have been in year one. In this area, I mentioned earlier that Fuquay-Varina Middle is co-located on that same campus as Bowling because it's a new site for the school. We're excited that the students have been able to shift from their original building to this new site, taking advantage of all the wonderful things that a new school provides. So while this is not a new school, we want to declare this is an existing school, it just happens to be on a new location. We don't recommend any changes to the operating calendar. We recognize that with the flexible capacity that was built into the design of this school, its total max capacity is actually 1,404 as compared to the 936 at its original location. And then, as I mentioned a couple of times, Bowling Road will be located on the same campus. So as a result, we would recommend, this is not from a need to relieve overcrowding at Holly Grove. We recognize that is a different challenge. However, if you were to move forward with the recommendations for Bowling Road Elementary, staff felt like answering that call for cohort continuity, that perhaps all of the Bowling Road Elementary base attendance area should also be assigned to Fuquay-Varina Middle. And so that's what this map represents, is that portion of the proposed Bowling Road attendance area that's not already assigned to Fuquay-Varina Middle. As you can see, this will have these projected impacts on the two schools. As I mentioned, this is not to relieve crowding at Holly Grove. This is specifically to provide cohort continuity for students in this area. We'll shift a little bit north from here now, so that covers all the schools that are projected to open in sort of the Holly Springs and Fuquay Elementary area, Holly Springs and Fuquay areas at the elementary level. So at the elementary level, we have one more school that's projected to open in the Apex area. This is Pleasant Plains Elementary. You can see its relative location highlighted here. The western area of the county, very proximate to 540. The schools that we are projecting to open the school as a multi-track year-round, again with a capacity of 924. Similarly, there are no other elementary schools projected to open in this area, and there are several CAP schools in this region. So from a stewardship perspective, staff recommends opening it as multi-track year-round to give us as much runway as possible in this region. Directly impacted would be Apex Elementary, Apex Friendship Elementary, and Scotts Ridge Elementary. However, there is a sort of cascading impact on Olive Chapel Elementary as well, and we'll kind of outline that in just a moment. Just as a friendly reminder, all but one of the schools on this list is currently capped. Apex Elementary is the only one that isn't, and you just took the cap off in February. So we'll focus on this area on the left, and we'll also take a different look at the impacts of the new capacity at Balcom Elementary in a separate slide. But here on the left, you can see the area that we're targeting. The portion that you see in sort of a dark peach color represents an existing portion of Scotts Ridge Elementary's base attendance area. For orientation, the lower line is US 1, the upper line is US 64. This line right here is 540, and this is 55 or Williams or GB Alford, depending on where you are in the county, which might call that. So this dark pink area is currently a part of Scotts Ridge Elementary space attendance area, but with Pleasant Plains being located here, we're recommending taking that southern portion of the attendance area and making it part of Pleasant Plains. We are looking at this area right here, making a recommendation that this existing neighborhood in the Apex Friendship Elementary base attendance area become part of the Pleasant Plains base attendance area. And we do recognize that that's an existing neighborhood, so that'll bring its own challenges. As a result, Scotts Ridge will be a little bit too small because of that impact by taking away this portion of its attendance area. So the idea is to relieve the capped and overcrowded Olive Chapel Elementary by taking this peninsula portion of its attendance area and assigning it to Scotts Ridge. And so that's the sort of cascade there. The map on the right also shows some other impacts related to Bauckham Elementary, but we'll discuss those in a separate map. These recommendations, again, are being made because we need to open a new school and provide an attendance area for the school, operational efficiency for those purposes. We did, of course, look at proximity and student achievement. In this case, again, specifically on that area that's sort of dark pink, we're really looking at a mixture of new neighborhoods as well as existing neighborhoods, so it's not all existing students being recommended for assignment. This shows us what our projected impact would be if you were to move forward with the recommendations. Again, a couple of asterisks on this slide because Olive Chapel is projected to be impacted by 2 sets of recommendations. As a reminder, not only is Olive Chapel currently projected to be this crowded, it's still sitting with 240 seats worth of capacity through its trailer complement. So the school needs continued relief to be able to get down to our operational standards. Bauckham Elementary, as you all know, was recently renovated. They've started operations in their school last week. And so this new site has an expanded capacity from 508 to 716. As a reminder, when they were situated at the Woods Creek site, we were showing that they had a capacity of 716 because Woods Creek would give them that at the traditional. But the site itself, when it was renovated, gained this additional 200 plus seats because of the renovation. And we want to take advantage of that with these recommendations. We're not recommending a change to the calendar for the school. We continue to operate on our traditional calendar. So with Bauckham having the expanded capacity, the idea would be able to give it a more stable base attendance area. So the recommendation would be to take this green highlighted portion from Olive Chapel, again, 64, 1, 540, 55. So this portion right here from the Olive Chapel base attendance area and align it to Bauckham Elementary, as well as to take this portion of the Salem Elementary base attendance area and align it to Bauckham Elementary. This area of Salem Elementary's base attendance area is poised for really rapid and high growth, so this gets ahead of that growth curve, so we can avoid having to potentially put a cap on that school over time. In this same space, we have 2 other moves that are being recommended. You can see the additional circles. This area is also a part of Salem Elementary's base attendance area that we're recommending become part of Laurel Park Elementary's base attendance area. The school could use a little bit of a boost in enrollment, and again, this provides that relief for Salem ahead of time before the growth comes. And finally, there is a satellite area to Bauckham Elementary that's no longer serving any particular purpose from an enrollment planning standpoint, so the recommendation will be to allow it to join similar cohorts and neighborhoods that are near it and go to Penny Road Elementary. And that frees up the space for Bauckham to take on those attendance areas from both of those schools. As you can see here, the before and after are on the same slide. So the blue labeled table on slide 65 shows us what it would look like if it were not to have any impacts on these schools. And then in the orange labeled table, we would see what the impacts would be if you were to move forward with the recommendations as proposed. And then Felton Grove High School. This will probably be the largest impact in the area simply because it involves high school students and there's just more of them at any particular school. The benefit to the way that the district opens high schools is that we do only open them with 9th and 10th grade, so not all students and all grade levels are impacted by the opening of the school. That's a shift I'm not sure the community is aware of from prior practices back in the day. But Felton Grove, as you can see, is situated here. It's sort of the near west part of the county. The school is projected to open in August of 25 on a traditional calendar with a capacity of 2,200, which really means 1,100 in its first year when it's only serving 9th and 10th grade students. The three schools that are projected to be directly impacted are Apex High School, Apex Friendship High School, and Holly Springs High School. Apex High School is currently serving as an overflow for the capped Apex Friendship High School, and Apex Friendship High School does have a feeder pattern cap. So just as a reminder, it's sort of dually capped. Not only are you capped for new residents, but you also could potentially be on a wait list if you're already living in the attendance area. Holly Springs Elementary is currently projected to be somewhat crowded as well. The largest impact geographically is on the Apex Friendship Base attendance area. You can see in the map on the left that the purple represents the current Apex Friendship High School base attendance area. The green represents the current Apex High School base attendance area, and the pink or rose color represents the current Holly Springs High School attendance area. So the recommendation at this point would be the portions of Apex Friendship High School that are below US 1, the portion of Apex High School that is below US 1, and then some small portions of the Holly Springs attendance area that are mostly north of Holly Springs Road become part of the attendance area for Felton Grove High School. This is to open a new school, to make sure we're being very operationally efficient with having a significant number of students to be able to operate the campus. We are looking for cohort continuity because at this point, most of the students in these areas are all assigned to similar elementary or middle schools, so this would allow them to travel forward as a large group, particularly keeping entire neighborhoods intact, which sometimes is difficult to do. And of course, we did evaluate student achievement and proximity in making the final recommendation. A cascading impact is that with the relief to Apex High School, the area that's highlighted in the circle on the left, the larger portion, that's bounded by 540 and US 1, or sort of its. This, for some of you may be familiar with Salem Village. This is an area that's currently assigned to Apex Elementary and Apex Middle, but Apex Friendship High. And so this would align that feeder pattern and give cohort continuity for those students by allowing them to be assigned to Apex High School. The small circle at the top is actually a technical correction. It's a Lowe's grocery store area. So just to get the map the way we need it to work for our plan units, there are no students impacted by that upper circle. It's just a technical correction that's being recommended. Apex Peakway is the northern border of that space. With the full set of recommendations for both Felton Grove High School as well as taking advantage of the newly available capacity at Apex High School that this might provide, you see the potential impacts here. These reflect just the movement of the 9th and 10th grade students, but it also sort of reflects all of them going, and with some stability rules that we recommend, we don't know that all of them will go. They might be able to join their older siblings, but this gives you an idea of what those impacts would be. As you can see, Felton Grove is poised to continue to grow rapidly because it'll continue to add a grade level. So it's not it's not that magnitude of growth necessarily as much as it is growth plus adding a cohort. Another area here is with all of those assignment recommendations, this area that's highlighted, its southern border is South Salem Street, its western border is Apex Peakway. It would be the only portion of this attendance area that's not aligned Apex Middle, Apex High, and so this would sort of clean all that up in this area to create cohort continuity for these students. Also providing relief to the capped Apex Friendship Middle School as well. So this one is being recommended for transportation efficiency, cohort continuity, as well as operational efficiency. And as you can see here, it's not a tremendous number of students involved, but it would provide a more seamless progression for the students in this area. Another set of mostly technical corrections, the circle that you see towards the top of this map, again, that is US 1. The area that is in green represents the current Apex Middle base attendance area on the north side of that. The sort of bluish color represents the current Lufkin Road Middle base attendance area. And the differently shaded green on the lower portion of the map represents the current Holly Ridge Middle. What we're recommending for that top portion, when we brought to you recommendations for Woods Creek last year, we intended for all Woods Creek students to be aligned with Lufkin Road Middle for that multi-track to multi-track match. We recognize that this one particular attendance area is not aligned, and so this would just align them to Lufkin. That actual southern border is Lufkin Road. That is the southern border of that green area that's circled in the top circle. So this would just align those students to Lufkin Road. The blue area that's down to the bottom, they were previously assigned to Lufkin Road Middle, as there were portions of Holly Springs Elementary at one time that were also assigned to Lufkin Road Middle, but with the opening of Woods Creek, that's no longer the case. The remainder of all the Holly Springs Elementary students are all assigned to Holly Ridge. So this is currently it's a commercial area, so we don't project it'll impact any students, but if it were ever to be rezoned, it would allow those students that cohort continuity to go together with their Holly Springs counterparts onto Holly Ridge Middle. And so these two recommendations are largely technical in nature and impact very few students. Again, being recommended for cohort continuity, transportation efficiency, and long-term operational efficiency. As you can see with the before and after numbers, it's just a very few students that would be directly impacted by the recommendations. And those are the recommendations related to the opening of new schools or cascading from the opening of those new schools. The next set of recommendations are related to those school choice options I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And so the first recommendation comes at the elementary level. To orient you, this yellow line represents the eastern edge of the Beltline. This is where 87 comes in. That road up there is Newbern Avenue. This area right somewhere in this general space is Wake Med. So this is an attendance area that's just sort of east of the Wake Med campus that's currently assigned to Oak Grove Elementary. It is one of our satellite areas that's assigned to Oak Grove Elementary. The recommendation is to take the portion that's eastmost of that area and assign it to Powell River Elementary for proximity purposes. There's a new development that's coming in place here, and to be able to assign these students to Powell Road before they start moving in and have that relationship with Powell Road. So this would be recommended specifically for transportation efficiency as well as proximity for families and students. As you can see here, at this time, because it's a new development, it has relatively few students, and over time, the students would align to Powell. Similarly, at the middle school level, we would like to create that feeder pattern alignment or cohort continuity for these families over time. And so this same area is being recommended to be assigned from Dillard Drive Middle to Ligon Middle, which, as you can see, is a similar area for some other students in the region. This area is already assigned to Enloe High School, so there aren't any recommendations coming for you at the high school level because that would be a logical cohort or a feeder pattern for these students. And again, you see here the projected impact from total enrollment. Moving north in the county, the top yellow line on this map represents 540. The black line kind of going up the center represents Creedmoor. The angled one kind of heading out to the left of the map represents Glenwood Avenue. And the dot that you see in the center represents the physical location of Leesville Road Middle School. This is an area, when you opened Barton Pond several years ago, there was some discussion about at the time, let's not adjust anybody's middle schools. Let's let that kind of sit for a minute. We're at that point where the minute has passed. And so now with the changes in the calendars and so forth in this area, it's created a space for us to be able to assign some students from Carroll to Leesville Middle that are already going to Barton Pond, and it creates a little bit of a cohort continuity for these families. We have heard from some families in this area requesting this change, so we feel that it'll mostly be positively received. However, we're open to any other feedback as we go through the review process. So this will be recommended largely for operational efficiency because it takes advantage of the capacity that's been made available at Leesville over time with some of these recent assignment changes to the school, as well as for transportation efficiency and cohort continuity. As you can see, the total impact on the schools is not terribly significant, and with Carroll being a magnet school, any additional seats we've made available here would be open for priority applicants to support our magnet program. All right, so to orient again, the top yellow line is 540. The more solid black sort of hoop looking line is part of the belt line. This road here is Capitol Boulevard, where it splits to Lewisburg and Capitol. And then just for orientation, right here, that southern edge of this piece, that actually is New Hope Church Road. So this is in the New Hope Church, Green Road, Kilcullen Drive region of the county, for anybody that's familiar with those roads and streets. The blue area on this map represents a portion of the Brentwood Elementary base. And years ago, the board aligned Brentwood Elementary to Centennial Middle and Southeast Raleigh High School. That way the base students could follow the magnet programming theme without having to put in any applications or requests. The portion that's highlighted and circled here is actually assigned to Brassfield Elementary and represents the only portion of Brassfield Elementary that's not going to either West Millbrook or Wakefield. And so the recommendation here from a feeder pattern and cohort continuity, as well as transportation efficiency and proximity perspective, is to align these students to West Millbrook Middle, as well as you'll see in a future slide, Millbrook High School. And so that just sort of gets those students who are actually attending Brassfield Elementary a much more logical cohort pattern to follow with their peers. You'll see here the potential impact. Again, Centennial being one of, West Millbrook, of course, is one of our magnet schools as well. But with Centennial being a magnet, it also has the ability to take on additional priority applicants with any seats that have become available through this recommendation. This is that exact same area. This would be the high school recommendation so that it's a full K-12 cohort alignment. So the recommendation here is to take this portion and assign it from Southeast Raleigh High School and assign it to Millbrook High School. Again, for cohort continuity, proximity, and improved transportation as well. And again, both schools are magnet schools, so any available seats that are created by these types of moves can be made available to priority applicants. Keeping in mind that both these schools do have a significant number of trailers. And that's it for base assignment changes. This next section, I'm going to admit, is a little cumbersome. So I'm going to try to talk through it a little bit more slowly so that we can understand the reason for it. In the past 2 years, our office and our team has come to you with sort of broad sweeping recommendations related to calendar application to try to relieve stress on our transportation system. We're not doing that this year. The recommendations that are coming to you this year are specifically related to the other base assignment changes that we've made. And as much as I'd love for these to be technical corrections that we can handle on the backside, they do require board approval. So when we start at the slide 88 and look at these elementary calendar application changes, how you would read it, we'll start at the top row. Apex Elementary operates on a traditional calendar. There's a portion of that base attendance area that's being proposed to be reassigned to Pleasant Plains multi-track year-round in that orange column. Well, currently it has a multi-track year-round application option of Laurel Park with transportation, but with that proposal to become assigned to a multi-track year-round elementary school, would no longer need that option. And so this is just to align that and to let you know that we would ultimately drop the multi-track year-round option of Laurel Park because they'd be base assigned to a multi-track year-round elementary school if you were to move forward with the recommendations that we proposed originally. And it kind of chips away like that all the way down these lists. Other changes that you might see is the second row is a little bit different. This area is currently assigned to Bauckham Elementary with a year-round option of Laurel Park, or application option of Laurel Park. It's being recommended to become part of Penny Road space. Well, that area, it actually more logically applies to Oak Grove for multi-track year-round. So we would just recommend aligning it for transportation efficiency and cohort continuity for those communities. If we go down a little bit further to the first Fuquay Arena entry, this one's a little bit different, or similar to what we saw at Apex. So I'm at traditional Fuquay Arena Elementary. I see currently today, if I type in my address, Valentine as a multi-track year-round option with transportation. However, I'm in that portion of Fuquay that's being recommended to be assigned to Bowling Road, and right now we're recommending opening it as multi-track year-round, so if that moves forward, they wouldn't need a multi-track year-round option anymore. So that's really how this reads. And then the very last one's a good example of where we are doing a little bit of a reduction. There's a portion of the Herbert Akins Road elementary base attendance area that currently sees 2 traditional choices, so think about the inefficiencies there for our transportation department. It's being proposed to actually be assigned to Holly Grove Elementary, which is still a multi-track year-round. So rather than take everything away, just reduce it to the 1 so we can clean up those transportation routes in that community and provide some cohort continuity for those communities. It kind of goes on and on like that through these elementary lists on slide 89. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I feel like once you learn how to read it, it kind of all starts to make sense. And then you get to slide 90. So as you can see, all of these are specifically aligned to base assignment changes that are being recommended, and they're all with an effort to try to improve transportation efficiency. When you get to slide 91, you see our entrance into the middle school. Same sort of factor here on slide 91, because there are recommendations to change the base assignment area for some middle schools. They no longer need a transportation option based on the assignment change that's being recommended. Or, in the case of the first one, Pine Hollow is no longer going to be multi-track year-round, so it logically couldn't serve as a multi-track year-round option for this area. And then slide 92 is directly related to your recent decision to approve the calendar change for Pine Hollow and Roseville Middle. It's basically saying since they're no longer operating on a multi-track year-round beginning in the 25-26 school year, they can't serve as a multi-track year-round option for areas. In addition, they no longer need a traditional calendar option. And so that's what you'll see as you go through the slide here on slide 92, is just recommendations Again, I'd love for these to just be technical corrections the staff could take care of for you, but they do require board approval, and so we wanted to make sure you were aware of all of those recommendations that are being included. And hopefully the part that lets people's shoulders drop a little bit. Over the last several years, as I mentioned, we've gone out into the public and we've heard very, very clearly that stability is really important for families. And while we definitely know that as a district we have to be operationally efficient and we have to have students attending our schools, we've found some ways where we can flex and bend a little bit and provide slightly more generous stability rules for families. So these all are directly related to feedback we've received from the public over the last several years. The first set of recommendations is that if a student is in an area that's being recommended to be assigned to one of the new elementary schools, so that's specifically Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, or Rex Road Elementary, we would use the same rules that you approved for Woods Creek Elementary last year, which is an expansion, not just rising fifth, but also rising fourth. So any current student who will be rising into fourth or fifth grade that's already attending an existing school that's being recommended to be assigned into one of the new schools would be eligible under this set of recommendations to remain assigned to their current school as long as they can provide their own transportation. In addition, that expanded generosity was that any younger siblings could also join them through the end of fifth grade. So that means that if a family's got a really well-established relationship with the school and they can provide transportation, they can stay there until as long as the students are close enough together in age, until the students, age through that program. Or if at some point they think differently of it and want to go to the newly assigned base school and get the transportation or go with students, who are in the neighborhood going to the school, they would also have that option as well. We won't give specific details on the stability transfer window because that all really depends on the timing, but it'll come after your final approval and we'll have a lot of direct communication with families letting them know they're eligible and reminding them multiple times if they don't put in their request that they are eligible, and we also partner with their school principals to let them know so they can help us on that side as well. So we really will make sure that families are aware of their stability options. At the high school level, that's the only other level that we're opening a new school for. As I mentioned several times, we don't actually assign 11th and 12th graders to the new school. They remain assigned to their current school with their current level of transportation. So what our recommendation is that their rising 9th and 10th grade siblings be allowed to join them. And then the transportation, I'm going to say, is a little nuanced here. As long as their older sibling is eligible for transportation and riding the bus, we can make things work and let them ride the bus with that older sibling. But once the older sibling stops riding the bus or is no longer eligible for transportation, then the family would need to provide continued transportation for the students as they age forward. And I say that's very nuanced because if the student's driving themselves and not riding the bus, that may be hard for us to add a stop. So we'll talk with individual families about that, but there will be a little bit of a potential chance for some transportation for some of these students where we won't be able to have that at the elementary level, only because those 11th and 12th grade students will continue to be assigned to the schools with transportation. And so this is specific to the Felton Grove High School assignment recommendations only. The rest of the slides outline that sort of cascading impact. So any other assignment recommendations, even into Buckham or Fuquay-Varina Middle, any of those other assignment recommendations to go into a school that's already operating, already has a population of students, we would recommend that you be as generous as you have been in the last couple of years and allow all students at any grade level the opportunity to stay as long as they can provide transportation. And of course, bring in those young kindergarten siblings at the elementary level. We've parsed it out, so the rest of the slides pretty much say the same thing, but just declare the middle school impact and the high school impact. We kind of called out Buckham because we know that some people might think, oh, it's a new school, it'll have the new school rules. It's not really a new school, right? It's a new facility, but it's an existing school, so it could handle those additional stability transfers. So at the middle school level, again, those really generous rules, we're calling out Fuquay-Varina Middle. It's a new site, but it's not a new school. So we would have these more generous rules that those students that are projected to go from Holly Grove to Fuquay, they could all stay at Holly Grove if they'd like to, as long as they can provide transportation. Same thing for the Centennial West Millbrook move and the Dillard Ligon move that was outlined in the presentation. And again, those 6th grade siblings would be able to join them as long as they're together. It's harder in middle school to keep the students together because those age gaps start to kick in. And then at the high school level, again, that sort of the Apex Friendship to Apex recommendation, the Southeast to Millbrook recommendation, those types of recommendations would fall under this bucket, where they would certainly be allowed to stay at their current school through the 12th grade and bring those rising 9th grade siblings with them if they'd like to. The reason for these generous stability rules, because I know that every time I talk about these with Glenn, he's like, but that could be a lot of students. And what it does is two things. It provides the stability that we can. We do hear very clearly without transportation, it isn't an option for some of our families, and we do understand that. But as a district, it's what we can provide to provide some stability for families. In addition, most of these schools are used to being overcrowded, so one more year of a little bit of overcrowding as they sort of, gently fall to their more stabilized population is good from an enrollment standpoint. It's good from a hiring of teachers standpoint, offering a program standpoint. It lets those schools gradually settle into their new size versus really significant drops. So it seems to be a win-win on both sides of that equation. Again, the challenge is not being able to provide transportation, and we do own and understand that. But right now we feel like that's where we are. Favorite websites. So again, all of this information is on our 2025 enrollment proposal. In addition, we've pre-populated some frequently asked questions to kind of tease out some of these questions that families might have individually. So we do highly encourage families to check that resource out as they can to maybe answer some of the questions that are already popping up in their minds. So where do we go from here? As a reminder, we've already done quite a bit of work to get to this point. So in March and May and June, we came and had public conversations with you about various aspects of the planning process for my seat, in addition to all the presentations you've had from our long-range planning and facilities design and construction teams to get to this point. So from here, we will start hosting our public engagement activities. We'll start those next week. We wanted to give families at least a week's notice to be able to plan for and to attend those. We're going to have a mix for the first time, probably since 2019, of virtual and in-person sessions. So we're going to have virtual sessions that families can attend from wherever they are, and they'll be able to ask questions. We'll focus the conversation into small chunks of the plan, so it won't take this long to get through the presentation, and we'll really tailor those conversations to those particular areas. In addition, the in-person session will be held at Herbert Dickensburg Middle School. The principal there's generously agreed to host us. We're going to have several departments available for face-to-face questions. We'll also have lots of computers available in case someone hasn't had a chance to look and see how their address is impacted. And that'll be an opportunity for families to come and get some of those really burning questions about before and after school care, academics, athletics. It's not a public hearing. I do want to be clear. That's going to be something separate that you all will schedule. But it's an opportunity for families that really just want to get a better understanding of what it's like to open a new school or attend a new school. We'll have some principals there. We'll have people from academics, athletics, as I mentioned. We'll have, I believe, child nutrition services, transportation, our facilities team if you've got questions about the facility design. So just a real good opportunity for families to float in as they can between 6 and 8 p.m. and get a lot of those questions answered. We'll also have translation services present, so anybody who needs those services will be available to support them as well. We'll come back to you in October with a review of all that feedback that we've received, not only from the virtual sessions and the thought exchange, but obviously that in-person session. You're welcome to join. Just check with Melissa or Mr. Malone about how many of you can show up. But you're welcome to join us there and meet with some of the families. When we come to you in October, if there are any revisions that need to be recommended based on the feedback that we're receiving, we'll bring those to you. We feel pretty confident that these are some pretty solid recommendations, but we're open to suggestion and impact changes. I would like for you all to come up with a date for your public hearing so that we can share that with the public. I know you need a lot of schedules to navigate for that. Once you have that, we'll share that with families. And then based on your recently adjusted schedule to going to the second and fourth weeks in November, we've adjusted our timeline that we would like to bring to you the final recommendations at your November 12th meeting. And so that's when you'll see the updates to her on this one. We'll have all of this information is on our website, including the links to the virtual sessions, but just to give you some awareness. So the Felton Grove High School session will talk not only about the Felton Grove, but those sort of associated moves at Peoples High School and a couple of those middle school recommendations. For Bowling Road and Rex, we'll also talk about those recommendations at the Fuquay-Varina middle level. Pleasant Plains and Bauckham will largely just be those two sets of elementary schools because there weren't really middle school recommendations or high school recommendations related to the opening of Pleasant Plains or the renovation at Bauckham. And then September 19th, we'll specifically outline all of these school choice recommendations that we made related to getting students to schools closer to home, as well as have an opportunity as a general overview for anybody who may have missed one of the earlier sessions. All of those sessions will be recorded and posted to the website as soon as they're available. And then any frequently asked questions that come up in these sessions that we can use to amend or update or improve our website, we will do so. And then, as I mentioned, September 24th, we'll have that open house It'll be a floating open house from 6 to 8 p.m., and we do encourage families that still have lingering questions to come join us at that time. And again, it's not a public hearing, it's just an opportunity to really get your questions answered about how is this going to impact my family, how do I make this transition. So anything specific to a public hearing will be at a date that you all establish as a board. My favorite website, as always, or two. And I'm going to drink some water.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pulliam. We'll give you a chance to rehydrate and prepare for the barrage of questions you might receive. When we grow 50 people a day in the county, we're going to need more schools. And building new schools means finding neighborhoods that will be assigned to those schools. Some people are happy to get a new school, some people aren't as much, especially if they've been at a school and are invested in it. So, this is something we take a lot of time with. This is something that we get a lot of citizen participation, citizen input in. And even though we know the process began months and months ago, this is the big public beginning of the process. I hope that was enough of a filibuster for you. All right. So I've got some questions, but we'll open it up around the table first. Ms. Mahaffey.
Well, since the 50 people are apparently all moving to my district and Ms. Johnson has this district, I appreciate the forethought into hearing yes, this is a big shift, but we're hoping not to touch these areas for a while. I think that is really important because this is really hard. The question that I have is what kind of communications are families that are impacted by this expecting? I know I just received a text message letting me know this was happening, and I assume that went out to many families, but I know between you and Corelli, there's a whole communications plan. So for families that are finding out, yes, I'm being impacted, what's the kind of communication that they're getting, not just today, but to let them know about the different sessions?
So we'll start with, as you mentioned, a general communication that went out to all families that are registered for our district communications, because we recognize that you may or may not realize that you're in an area that's potentially impacted. So the entire list of registered, please send me messages people received that message as we were talking. In addition, we have prepared a toolkit for all of our impacted principals, and we've reached out to them ahead of time to say, hey, you've got some attendance areas that are here, and we know that parents read your emails faster than they read our emails. So they have some templated messages that they can include in their messaging as well to say, hey, if you've not plugged in, so they'll be sending those out in their weekly messages to their base attendance areas directly so that those families will get, and they have, sometimes better email addresses than we do, candidly. And so that will happen. In addition, as we get closer to October and it's starting to look like it's firming up, that this set of recommendations is what's moving forward, we will, along with the principals, be sending targeted messages to families to really say, hey, if you've not tuned in yet, you really need to tune in because we need to get your feedback.
And if they tune into that website that you've displayed so many times today, there is access to the Thought Exchange right now?
The Thought Exchange is live.
Just quickly explain how that works.
Sure. So a Thought Exchange is a tool that we've been using as a district for several years now that allows for an open discussion as a community. So some of our families may be familiar with it, others may not have used it yet because they've not been in a conversation that used the tool. What it allows families to do is to look at some background information and also to get a very prompted question that kind of asks them, hey, what do you need from us to better understand the recommendations or to make sure you understand how this impacts your family. Families can then, sort of like a sticky note, put in an individual thought, and they can put in as many thoughts as they'd like. The power of it, though, is that once they get done putting in their individual thoughts, they're then given a random assortment of other people's thoughts to rank or rate. And so that lets us get a sense of, is there a lot of community connection on this? Are we getting a lot of fives? Okay, everybody in the community, regardless of who you represent, you feel strongly about this. Things like academic quality will tend to get that type of feedback. I'd like to be reassigned, I don't want to be reassigned. We might get an average of a 3. Okay, so there are some communities on both sides of this. The other thing that we've been able to do is on the entry point, we've been able to ask some survey questions so that we can say, hey, the people that identify as being Apex or Holly Springs are responding this way, or the people that identify as Wake Forest are responding this way. So we can really tease out if it's a community-specific concern or if it's a global district concern. And it's anonymous. The big power about it is it's anonymous.
And back to the communications plan. So we know some families who feel like we send too many emails, text messages, carrier pigeons from the district, and so they opt out of communication from the district. How do we plan on reaching them?
That's, I think, where we dig into the principals by saying, hey, principals, your families aren't opting out of your messages, so if you could back us up by sending messages to your families as well, that way if they have somehow opted out, they're getting them from you. That's why we came up with that dual-pronged approach a couple years ago.
And then I know we have some of those areas where English is not the predominant language in some of those pockets. What about language access for families?
All of the materials that we prepare and share with principals and that we send out from are already dual translated in English and Spanish. And then the website itself, anybody can click whatever language they would like, as well as in the thought exchange that works for them. And we do see families accessing a myriad of different languages when they're interacting with those tools.
I will have more questions digging down into my district later, but those were the overall general questions for right now, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Further questions? We'll go Dr. Ring, then Ms. Evans.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the way that some of those areas kept within certain major roads, so that it makes a lot of sense. Although, you know, I'm looking at some of those neighborhoods, I'm still concerned about like how neighborhoods can be effective in you know, when you go down to the granular level. The question I do have specifically is on page 56, the impact on Holly Grove Middle School with the shifting.
Sorry, close your eyes. I'm almost there.
Yeah, so it goes from 63% to 55% for a multi-threat year-round. So are we going to have more conversations
Yes.
as a result of that?
Yes, this is a precursor to when you look at steps 5 and 6 in the 6-step process, that we're going to have additional conversations. These moves are to the south of the base attendance area for Holly Grove Middle, but we're seeing significant growth to the north end. So you see where Sharon Harris Lake is to the left, that white area north of the yellowish orange there, that is the area where we're experiencing high growth, where Woods Creek is opening. That would be an area we would look to align with Holly Grove Middle School. Because beyond that line that's up in the corner, that's US 1, is Apex Friendship Middle School, and their base attendance area pulls down south of 1, and that area is a CAP school.
I'll drive you around sometime. There's trees cleared every day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ring. Ms. Evans?
So slide 64, that teeny little piece for Penny Road, do you have a sense of how many students that's impacting?
We don't do numbers of students this early because everything's still subjective. It's not a tremendous number of students, not a highly, it's not a densely populated area, but
It's an established neighborhood over time.
but if we look at the percent
It's been a
impact
well-established
change-
neighborhood over time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you look at the percent impact change for Penny going from 85 to 90, that kind of gives you an idea that it's in that smallest range. And because this is existing to existing, those families would have the opportunity to stay at Bauckham if they'd like to, that are already attending. It would just be the new families moving in that would need to make the transition unless they needed transportation.
Okay, all right. And then slide 95, just the stability rules. You don't necessarily have to go there.
It helps everybody else.
But the stability rules specific to Felton Grove, because I heard you and I saw the subsequent slides that the stability rules are different for the other high school changes. I understand that. So I want to ask specifically about Felton Grove. So if the younger siblings stay with transportation with their 11th or 12th grade sibling, when the 11th or 12th grade sibling graduates, the siblings lose the transportation even though they're there for another year or 2. Okay, just wanted to clarify. That's it.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. All right, we have a lot of people who want to speak, so next we'll go to Vice Chair Johnson Hostler, then Ms. Rice, Ms. Caulfield, then back to me, then anybody else.
Thank you very much for the precursor that we do have a school in the district that has both the traditional and year-round but you know no one cares what you do in another part of the district that's not their district. So no one will hear that statement, but thank you for saying it. It will not be relevant to them. I will say, I guess one of the pluses is you are hosting it at Herbert Akins, so it's close proximity. However, you know my concern is that is not existing currently in my district, and so it will be very new to a community. We are introducing two new concepts. One, we don't generally do well to multi-track year-rounds in District 2, so not only are we placing mix-match calendars on the same property, we are also creating a new school calendar that is not as common in the district. It used to be, but we phased most of those out. So yes, I appreciate that you're going to send multiple emails and carrier pigeons, as been stated earlier. It's still a huge concern for me, and so I will ask you now. What you know I'm going to ask you is, I think you already got to start thinking about options that are going to be real needs for families who are not going to want to drive their fourth grader and their seventh grader on two different calendars to the same school. So we may be able to get it passed without any problems. The community may be on board, but I'd be remiss if I let you go through this whole process and not acknowledge that's going to be an issue, and I will eventually want to ask for an alternative. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. Next, Ms. Rice, then Ms. Caulfield.
First of all, I want to say that was a lot, and you all are absolutely amazing. So thanks for sharing all that. I do want to ask on page, I believe for me it was like page 37. Yeah, it's the same thing, kind of like Dr. Eames. I think 37 is the right one for me. And basically it's about, I'm looking at the capacity piece with that, and so 37 is, I'm looking for the base school impacts.
Which schools?
That should be page 37, is that not right? Which schools? I'm looking at Dillard to Ligon, and then I think wherever Southeast might go, and then Oak Grove to Powell.
So this would start with the Powell Elementary recommendation coming from Oak Grove to Powell Road.
I want us to look at, when we're looking at the base school impacts for middle. Yeah, that's right.
This is the elementary one, look specifically at the Ligon.
Yes. No, from Powell, that's it.
Slide 80.
That's right. 80, I'm sorry.
No, you're
How did I get that? Oh, wait a second.
Too many pages don't work.
The area that we're recommending adjusting doesn't have students in it yet. It's that area off of Carl Sandburg and Sunnybrook Road. So over time, it will start to populate with students, but right now, it would technically impact no existing students. So you're not seeing a major change in the numbers because over time, as that housing complex, that apartment complex.
Okay, so we're right there teetering, and so what you're saying is, though, we'll continue to monitor. It's just my concern for teachers or staff to deal with a high needs area already, and if we continue to overcrowd, what is that going to look like? So I'm really concerned about that. And then I think it's the next one too, where I saw it was going to reach capacities of 103 and 102.
Is that for Powell maybe?
For Powell, yes. That is very concerning for me.
I will say at the elementary level, we find that anywhere from 95 to 105 is actually a sweet spot, particularly for our magnet programs, because it allows them to offer all of the electives that they need to offer. When we get above 105 is when we get really nervous. However, with it being one of our premier magnet schools, we also can monitor that and determine if we need to. We will continue to monitor it so that if it does get to where it's too crowded, we could either look at reducing the total number of magnet students or adjusting the base, because it does have a decently large base attendance area in the future. We do want to monitor the school, yes.
I'd like to have a second conversation about that to better understand that, because I hear what you're saying and I get it, but I'm really concerned with that number. And I know you say that's normal, but I think the challenge is around normalizing overcrowdedness in an already a high needs area for families, and I think that puts a lot of pressure to me on teachers in particular. So I really would love to speak about that in some other way later, what that's going to look like, so that we can kind of look at a different model of saying it's okay to overcrowd our high needs. That's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Russ. I appreciate that.
And understood.
Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. I know that's a little bit of information, and it is important to understand that, like you said, 50 people moving here a day, that's quite a bit. We do actually see the growth happening all over the county. I like the fact that even though some of it is big shifts, we're kind of grouping, which allows us to do the stability a little bit better and the proximity, and not keep the students in class for such a long period of time. A couple of the slides, though, I was just wondering why we were structuring it that way. So like 64 to 65. It looks like we kind of are going up in the orange category. And the purple is still kind of like all over. So I'm wondering why we're not, like, what's going on there? I'll start with that.
Yeah. So for the attendance area for Salem Elementary, you can see that we are condensing it a little bit to two major groups. The area that would be east of 55 and the area that would be west of 540. The area that's west of 540 is part of that Green Level High School base attendance area. It's just south of the current White Oak Elementary base attendance area. It's a high growth area, and our projections are showing us that if we don't do something, this area would be at like 170%. I mean, I'm being egregious a little bit, but it would be so crowded in the next couple of years based on the projected enrollment on already approved residential developments, not to include those that have yet to be approved. So we were trying to get ahead of the curve, and because these are existing to existing, families would have those generous stability rules. This would allow Salem to maybe not drop tremendously, but just get ready for that wave of new students coming in. In addition, Bauckham Elementary is an overflow school currently for both Apex Friendship Elementary and Scotts Ridge Elementary. And our proposal here is to take advantage of the base attendance area in such a way that we can provide relief to some of those overflow situations in the region. Right now, Bauckham does have a high percentage of students that are at the school because of overflow, which aren't technically in their base assignment area or in their community. And so this helps to move us towards that space where Bauckham could be a community school like most of our other schools are.
But it's
So that 112% is a bit of it's not quite probably going to happen because a lot of those numbers are based on those overflow students, which when Scotts Ridge gets relieved, and if you move forward with the Apex Friendship Elementary relief, some of those students can actually get called back. So it's kind of worst case scenario for Bauckham, but in reality, it shouldn't be that.
okay.
And we've been talking with the principal and area superintendent in that region to monitor that very, very closely. And to Glenn's point, step 5, where we start looking at cap schools, we may have to come with a different recommendation for the overflow partner for those schools if you do move forward with these recommendations.
What's in between the purple? I know we're highlighting the changes, but
Turner Creek. The Turner Creek base attendance area is right here, and then most of that white area over there is White Oak Elementary. And some of those satellites that we see, Glenn can speak to because he was here when a lot of it happened, but it was areas where we were trying to assign areas that didn't have students at the time to avoid the pressure on those cap schools in that region, but we can probably describe it better than I do.
It was to assign vacant land prior to development to discourage families from purchasing homes in those areas so that they wouldn't be attending a overcrowded school.
okay. And then I kind of a little bit similar question on 59 to 61. That slide. So I'm wondering on this one, because it looks like, I mean, if you go to the northeast side in the yellow to the southwest side, it just looks like such a difference. Was there a reason why we didn't go more east to west with that? If we're making such a big change here?
I think I understand the question, but if I don't, please let me know. This area represents the current attendance area for Scotts Ridge Elementary.
Right.
Pleasant Plains is going to be here. So the thinking was, since Scotts Ridge is capped and overcrowded, let's relieve it geographically, south of that part of the attendance area, but let's leave as much of its current attendance area intact as possible so it doesn't have to have a complete shift in community and families. So to take this area, most of this area is a mixture of developing land and a handful of students, but most of this area is what's the growth area. So if we can get these students assigned to Pleasant Plains, some of this is existing students, then that provides that relief to Scotts Ridge long term and also gives Pleasant Plains a nice healthy base that will grow over time, kind of like this we did for Woods Creek last year. That does relieve Scotts Ridge a little too much, but we have this really overcrowded cap school, Olive Chapel, just near it. So the thought was to take this section, which is currently assigned to Olive Chapel, and assign it to Scotts Ridge. I think their middle school is already traditional, and so this would give them some K-8 calendar alignment as a family, since Scotts Ridge is traditional and Olive Chapel is multi-track year-round. This area right here is not as close to the school we recognize, but in terms of the crowding at Apex Friendship and no new schools coming in this region after the opening of Pleasant Plains for the foreseeable future, we felt like we had to make some recommendation to provide modicum of relief to that campus, as it's sending a significant number of students to Baltimore over right now.
And Scotts Ridge and Pleasant Plains almost back up to each other. So they're very close in proximity. So
And that
the
distance
biggest
isn't a
change,
hardship?
it's the distance that they've been doing, so it isn't a huge change in distance.
Yes, so technically, that group will go a little bit closer. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement, but technically they'll be stopping here instead of having to go to there.
So the biggest
roughly the
change
same
is
distance they were
calendar,
traveling
the
today.
calendar change for that group. Yeah.
And the reason we didn't go any further east is because the schools to the east of that line are actually pretty stable and doing okay. And so we didn't want to, the growth is really on that western side of 540 in that area.
Right, okay. And then my last question, if I could, on slide 77. I'm not sure if you addressed this because I was just kind of flipping back and forth, just trying to catch up. The part for Powell that we added, is that two different colors, or these are just two colors, right? 'Cause it says on Powell
So this
Elementary.
entire area currently is assigned to Oak Grove Elementary and Dillard Drive Middle. This portion of the attendance area already has existing students in it, and it's pretty densely populated. It's way too many students to be able to fit in a school like Powell with 308 capacity. So we couldn't make a recommendation for the entire area to be able to come to a school closer to home. However, this area is going to have a new complex being built off of Carl Sandburg and Sunnybrook. And so we thought if we could move that one ahead of time before it starts becoming students, we have space for that number of students at Powell Elementary and Ligon Middle. And so that could chip away. We're going to continue to monitor this area because we do recognize that that is a very long distance for the students to travel to school. And it's an assignment from years past, but we just, at this time, the schools in this area are so small with capacities of 300 or so that to bring that number of students to a school closer to home is going to take a little bit more work.
So on the next page, 78, it looks like their percentage of their capacity is actually increasing with that change, or is
For
that?
Powell?
Yeah.
But just a little bit, yes, because of the number of students that would come from the complex.
So that's adding the new kids in
To Powell.
and then redistricting other ones. It's still going to increase that much?
No, Oak Grove will have a reduction over time. Because there's no existing students living there, the direct impact in 25-26 is pretty nominal because we're making a projection for the growth moving forward. Does that make sense? Maybe?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So, Ms. Pulliam, I know that you cannot look in your crystal ball and tell us exactly how many students will change schools through the reassignment plan. But, that's a question we're going to get. I've already gotten a couple times today. Do you have a range on how many you think could move or how many you think could opt to stay under the stability rules? Because it's a very generous stabilization set this year so that a lot of the existing students can stay.
From what we've seen in the past several years, it really is going to be regional and school to school. So if the students are being assigned from a traditional school to a multi-track year-round school, we expect a higher rate of stability transfers because the families will want to maintain their traditional calendar if they can. Until they find out that the neighbor friend is going to the new school, and then we get the back-to-base request a little bit later in the year, and then they all go together. But we did, like with Woods Creek opening, we did notice that those that were coming from a year-round into Woods Creek were more likely to accept the reassignment and go, but those that were coming from a traditional into Woods Creek were more likely to maybe 50-50-ish kind of use the stability rule. So that's at the elementary level. The additional impacts for the shorter we've made the drive to school with the reassignment, the more likely they're going to take it, we've noticed. So if we've gotten you to a school that's significantly closer to home than where you're currently assigned, they're much more likely to accept that assignment. We can look at our Leesville examples from last year. There was a significant number of students that were assigned from Leesville Elementary to much closer elementary schools in the downtown area around St. Olive. The vast majority of those families accepted the new assignment because of how much closer the assignments were to home. So it really is going to depend on which recommendations you're looking at. At the high school level, based on the feedback I've heard already, I would think if the families have older students that they can attach those 9th and 10th graders to, they have a pretty high likelihood of wanting to do that. The handful of differences are when there's a student that's like, I don't want to go to school with my older brother or sister. I want to go with my friends to my new school. And so there'll be a little bit of a split there. But I would think the vast majority of families that have an older sibling would probably try to take that stability transfer and have their students be together at the same high school campus. So it's numbers, I can't give you concrete, but just behaviorally, that's kind of what we're seeing pattern-wise.
So there's two areas that I want to look at. One is on slide 86.
But we'll try to have something a little bit more concrete when we come to in October.
So this is, if I get a little more explanation on this, we've been dealing with schools, particularly in the North Raleigh, northern part of the county, hitting high capacities. And we also know that we've been trying to boost capacity at some of our southern high schools, particularly our magnet school programs. This seems to go in the opposite direction. So what can you tell me about this one?
I'll start with mine and then you can. This is specifically because this area that's highlighted is the only area, this is going to that feeder pattern conversation that goes to Rossfield Elementary, but then on to Centennial Middle and Southeast Raleigh High School.
Okay, so it's a
So the
cohort.
idea here is you're the only students that don't follow that path to either West Millbrook or Wakefield with your cohort. And so this was an opportunity to take a small area and allow them to have that cohort continuity. Candidly, just looking over all the things you've asked us to look over from a feeder pattern standpoint. In addition, this allows the students to go to schools that are significantly closer to home.
So, when we get the first draft of the plan, that's really pretty much the baseline. And I know that as staff, you all don't like to put new things into second versions of the plan if they're not in the first version of the plan, because people might not be paying attention anymore because it's like, well, hey, we weren't in the plan, we're good. And then suddenly they find their neighborhood in the plan. But I have some concern about the high school assignments in that area. And we've talked back and forth sometime about Sanderson High School being under-enrolled. We've worked really hard to try to get Leesville Road High School under 100%. Now we see Millbrook Road, Millbrook Magnet High School, which is the only magnet high school up there in that part of the county, pushing up to 100%. In the past, we've seen in some early drafts proposals to move some students from Millbrook into Sanderson. That's not in this plan. Is that something that's been thought about, or is there a plan for that going forward, just so that we can ensure that there'll still be magnet seats available at Millbrook, and maybe try to help out? And looking at it for cohorts, there's a large part of that West Millbrook cohort that does go on to Sanderson. So you could keep kids in the same neighborhood.
So yes, we have looked at that for quite some time. Sanderson in particular, its impact on Leesville. As we start to look at cohorts, because we're getting that feedback from families that that's really important, is having those cohorts. We're looking at elementary to middle school to high school feeder patterns in the areas. And so with 4 new schools opening this year, we didn't feel it was in our best interest to add additional assignments significantly outside of opening the 4 new schools. We do have some, but not significantly more. And so we anticipate next year, when we only have maybe 1 school opening, that we can continue to look at those impacts in those areas and look at the alignments K through 12.
And so, staying in that same area, we also saw with a Centennial to West Millbrook, and that was explained, West Millbrook is the only middle school up there with a capacity near that optimum level. And it is also a magnet, so we saw that it can handle more seats. But so many of the other magnet schools around that area are below optimum capacity, some getting down to like the 60%, 65%, low 70%. One of the things that if you blink, you might miss it because there's no pretty map that goes with it, that we do in this plan is that we remove some we move some calendar options from some middle schools. And you remember we just had the conversation about converting Pine Hollow Middle School to a traditional calendar. Now, Pine Hollow was under-enrolled. It wasn't really supporting a multi-track population. But if you remove that as an option for Carroll, for Leesville, for West Millbrook, and obviously the Pine Hollow kids are no longer there, a lot of those middle schools have feeder schools that are multi-track year-round. So potentially, we've always tried to keep kindergarten through 8th grade calendar alignment. And I know in my area, you'll have Sycamore Creek that's affected, Briar Creek that's affected, Pleasant Union that's affected, and there might be some more in Dr. Ing or Mr. Hershey's districts as well up there. I know that the challenge is that there's no other multi-track year-round middle school proximate to those schools. But what I'm wondering is, even if you gave them an option to attend the next closest school, say like Durant Road, which right now is single track, you could get an idea about supply and demand through the applications. And maybe you could potentially have enough parents that do like that year-round calendar and who do want to keep their middle school children and their elementary school children on the same calendar, that maybe you could get more use out of that Durant Road Middle School. And I just say Durant because that's the first one I can think of up there. But I know that for a lot of the parents in my area, even though they're not being reassigned, their family schedule is still getting disrupted and destabilized because of these calendar changes. And I know they could still pursue a change of schools through a transfer, but if there was a way to kind of support some under-enrolled year-round schools and still give these families an option for calendar stability, I'd just like to see if that's something we could explore maybe in the second draft.
So are you asking for us to include district bus transportation for these families to go to a Durant, or just the ability to apply to Durant?
Well, I don't know what that would mean. I don't know. And again, if it's a handful of children at each school, it just might not be efficient. It might not be cost efficient. But if there were a significant number, then maybe it is worth it. I just don't know. I'm just, the families that I hear from are concerned about just the destabilization of their calendars. The transportation issue is kind of a secondary issue right now. So just to be able to get some answers for them would be helpful.
And I can part explain, the reason why we ended up opening up Pine Hollow in that area was because we did have a significant number of families attending Durant Road, and the distance was a concern. However, over time, we don't have the need for multi-track year-round in that area anymore, and so that's why we've gone through the conversion. I'm not 100% certain that families will travel that far just for a calendar. We've got some data, from historical applications over time. However, we can continue to explore and see and get a pulse from the community as to would they travel, and then look at other options to help support them.
Even if it's something, if you could look at those numbers, and even if we don't change it this year, it's an opportunity to hear from families and then see if that could change.
Sure.
And then that's something we could address next year. Okay, thank you. All right, are there any more questions about the reassignment plan, the changes to calendar options? I know for many people this is your first look. There's a lot to digest. And again, Ms. Pulliam has shown you the wonderful websites to go to with lots of information, and I know staff will be available for any individual questions board members have between now and the second draft. Is that all right?
I'll call your attention to the two addenda that were attached separately. One is a set of detailed maps These are in PDF format where if someone's looking at them on their computer, they can zoom in and see street names. However, they can also get similar information by going to the website and using the address lookup tool. In addition, the other addendum is a couple of data reports that we often include with this first draft. We just note that we have not hit 20th day numbers yet, so these are just based on early enrollment looks early in the school year. So those pieces of information are there for your review and question as well.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pulliam. Thank you, Mr. Carrozza. All right. The next item on our agenda is Board Policy 1810, the proposed sustainability policy. We'll have, I'm not sure who's driving, Mr. Burnett or, okay, accompanied then by Mr. Strickland.
Give a slide picture.
Give everybody a quick moment to transition.
Yes, happy.
So, Dr. Crane is not here today, so we are flying solo without her. We shared notes back and forth and that information that we gleaned from the last time we met to discuss this, which was the policy committee meeting back in May. What I'd like to do is just go through the main talking points and takeaways that we got from that last meeting and share that out with you all. Julie did go through and revise the policy. It's in a much different format. And this is based on the information that we got from that May meeting. I'll just go through some of the notes that we had. The policy committee shared that they wish to see a policy that included broader goals and more governing language. And specifically, staff was asked to include 4 broad categories, and these are managing resources, conserving resources, reduce and eliminate waste, and reuse and recycle material. And I know Ms. Mahaffey has spoken with Julie, I believe, about some of this. Is that correct?
There was more on this list, but yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that.
Okay. And then each of those areas included some different tenets of areas of focus. The policy now includes, the proposed policy includes a section about monitoring and reporting. And that's kind of the big takeaway that we had from where we were to where we ended up. And I'd just like to place that on the table for discussion and comment. The draft policy is in assembly. It's down to 2 pages, much more condensed. We don't have an RMP. We haven't followed up with that yet. But this is where the policy stands right now.
And so you'll see one that says May draft and one that says August draft.
We're focusing on the August draft.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Mahaffey, as policy committee chair, do you have any thoughts or feedback on where we are now? Otherwise, I'll open it up.
I'm happy to hand it over to Mr. Hershey, who brought homework.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey.
So I guess the question to the board, I'm going to pass this around. This is NC State's policy and sustainability policy and policy statement. I guess the question that I have is, are we doing a broad sustainability policy that impacts all aspects of the school system, or are we doing an environmental sustainability policy? Because this reads like it really just impacts one aspect of our school system. But to me, a sustainability policy should impact potential budget decisions that we have. Are they sustainable long-term? It could impact pilot programs we do for any number of aspects within the school system, academics. How do we expand programs? How do we have them throughout the whole school system versus a one-off in a school? And so I guess that's, until we kind of answered that question. And let me say, I love, from manage resources down, I love all that. And to me, that would be like what facilities might present to us as their part of the sustainability plan itself. But so that's kind of where I'm at as far as what is the sustainability policy supposed to be about?
And I think when we spoke back in, well, the first time that we spoke about this in May, I think there was some consensus about this leading towards not necessarily an RNP, but an RNP and likely a sustainability plan created by the district, just like we had our equity policy, and then the district crafted an equity plan for the district. And so I think that's kind of what our thoughts were, was how do we get the overarching goals that would then help the sustainability plan come into action, but with the idea that it would also impact many aspects of our district. So not just the building management or waste management, but other practices, as Mr. Hershey stated.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. So, I guess what I'd like to offer is that we have been working on a sustainability policy for some time, and just like our equity policy and some of our other policies where we haven't had a template or a model, there's a lot of different places to start, and sometimes it's hard to get to exactly where we want to go. But we know that there's a lot of pressures around sustainability in terms of operations, facilities, and that sustainability in these areas have a direct impact on our budget operations. We know that many business decisions right now that are being negotiated are going to be impacted by the decisions we make around a sustainability policy. So while I agree with Mr. Hershey, I also don't want to take away from the policy that we have on the table and everything that's in 1810. And what I wonder is if rather than this being our entire sustainability policy, that we can still consider and adopt this policy, even though knowing it's part of a bigger plan, so that we might have a sustainability mission or vision that we adopt that maybe takes into some language similar to the NC State policy, that takes into effect things beyond, facilities and business operations. We might have sustainability and education that could expand off of that. But if we have a good cornerstone right here to build upon, I'd like us to consider adopting this with any changes that you all see, related to this, but then knowing, as Mr. Hershey has suggested, that we do need to do more, and we can build more upon that. Maybe getting this out there, getting more public debate around it, and then trying to pull in more parts of the district. Bringing in, academics and student achievement to get their feedback on this. I know sometimes we've seen there's just so many things this touches, but we have to start somewhere. And so I just throw that up for your consideration.
One of the things we struggle with is that this is somewhat loosely centered around our buildings and what we do with that, but there have been many conversations about how this affects the rest of the district. So, for example, recycling in the schools. While that may not be specifically in FD&C, it is could be a large component of what we do within the district. So there are other things that we would look at. I would note as well, I believe one of the things we talked about was monitoring and reporting. At some point in time, we need to have that conversation about how we capture that data, because we don't have the staff or resources to do that right now. But that would be something that we would have to look at and investigate, whichever direction we ended up going forward with.
And I do think that's something we can build off of, right? If we have monitoring and reporting and we're beginning to capture that, then when we have the data, we can look at goals, not just aspirational goals, but like progress and phases, plans to meet those goals. We can come up with a reporting back process and a plan for continuous improvement. Mr. Hershey, you have a thought?
Well, I was just going to say, the way Wake Tech lists their sustainability is facility operations sustainability. So maybe if we're going to move forward on this particular framework for sustainability, we just call it facilities operations sustainability and build it through that, and then work on a separate sustainability policy that could impact other parts of the school system.
And to build on that, I'm going to lean on Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler and Ms. Mahaffey. In terms of the numbering scheme that we use for policy,
Where I'm going.
I was going to say, would we want this as an 1810? Would we want it as a later one and keep another number as a placeholder for something like a sustainability plan or a sustainability vision that sort of gets to some of these other items?
That's kind of what I'm leaning towards with the 9000 series being specifically on facilities. Currently, there's only 3 policies in the new one. We haven't migrated that far yet, getting there. But I think that might be a good fix. And then as we're building a broader sustainability plan, this can go in, but
I don't, tell me what you're saying. I don't think you're saying, are you saying the same thing, Tracy?
I
I
am.
think so. But
Okay.
if you heard it different, I want to
I
hear what you
did.
think too.
I didn't know what she was saying. That's why I was asking. I was like, I'm not sure
No.
what you're saying.
I'm saying
Yeah.
this one.
Then yes, I agree. Sorry.
Fitting in the 9000 series
Sorry.
makes sense to me rather than keeping it at 18.
Now I understand. Okay.
It's just about the numbering and the
I knew
structure.
what you said. I wasn't sure if she was agreeing.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Ms. Caulfield.
I guess I'm trying to understand around, I understand what they're saying, but I like the fact that it broke down and got real specific with what it means to us.
Yeah.
And while I appreciate NC State has this, it's more of like kind of a statement than it is direction. So although it could go into facilities, I still think if it's in the 1800 series, it's kind of like how we're going to practice. So I don't know, I kind of see all points.
Yeah. I mean, we can always migrate things back over into a new section, but I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out like structurally, and I don't always know like the reasoning for what goes where and why on the
This
policies.
says, we're breaking it down to like manage resources, conserve our resources, reduction in waste. Like we're getting real specific with how we as a whole want to act. And whatever falls into those categories, it's still going to direct us in how we're going to do that. So I kind of feel like it is governing.
It is, but it could still be in that like 9600
Right.
range. And then if we adopt like a sustainability plan policy or a sustainability vision policy, then it could refer back to it. It could move over. You could see it growing out from there. But for right now, the people that are going to use it the most directly, I think where you're going to see the largest impact the most immediately will be in those facilities and operations. Until we have more direction about where we want to get it, like you said, into all those other areas. I agree with that. Other question? Any other comments, thoughts?
I'm wondering what facilities things.
So there are many areas that we can track. You know, we talked about recycling, garbage, looking through some of Dave's notes, dumpsters, you know, how many tips we're making. An area where I would love to do some additional dives is energy use. But we don't have anybody right now to do that for us. That position's vacant. So I think there are many areas in transportation. There's some areas there that we can look at. You know, tonnage of tires we recycle, all kinds of things. So there is a large slice of that pie that would be operational in nature. But again, at the schools, there are other opportunities, not only for things like paper, but for plastics as well. And we would have to figure out a way to capture that information. We would also need to incorporate that component of this into whatever we're going to do, wherever we end up next year with our waste contract. Because, you know, that was a component this year we kind of punted on trying to figure some of this out. We may not have it figured out for next year fully, but at least we can think through how we can draw schools into the plan a lot deeper.
So, board members, if you're picking up some of this, we're talking about policy, its relationship to facilities, but it is tied back into what? It's tied back into budget. And as we talk about, budgets and what we want to do with the budget going forward, these are some conversations we need to have now because it provides direction to the district as they put together a budget proposal for next year. So as we've seen this year, there are a lot of direct impacts on our schools that come out of decisions we make over things like HVAC systems and having sufficient project managers to oversee these projects. If we want to track this data and we want to see what our most efficient operations are, if we want to see where we can conserve resources, if we want to see where we can save money, it might require adding someone who can compile and track that kind of data and do the sort of performance audits that will guide our senior leadership in terms of making these decisions, what's cost effective, what's not cost effective, where are we seeing a return. And I think you can bring a case to us that justifies that kind of increase in staff. And I don't want to get too far off topic, but I know we'll hear updates soon about we've basically commissioned 2 different studies about our management operations. And this really could be an area where having someone to collect, to analyze, to audit that data, you're spending money to potentially save money. I think it would be a good investment. So I know the item on the agenda is sustainability policy, but I recognize that this travels through a lot of different areas of the district. And so, again, having this policy in place now can help us plan for what we would need to do next year to improve our operations and our efficiency. Ms. Mahaffey.
So with that being said, and seeing that this is going to impact different pieces, reversing my previous decision and thinking that having it as an umbrella governing policy is a better idea, to have it more forward-facing rather than someone going, oh, that's just a building piece and it doesn't impact my classroom or my budget.
Vice Chair Johnson-Hostel.
Yeah, and I would agree, and thank you for saying it that way, Ms. Caulfield, because it did go back to your original question, which was, that's what took us so long with the equity policy. We kept going back and forth about, like, did we want an overarching theme versus did we want to break down the equity policy? And I do think the right decision is the forward-facing, here's what we believe, and then all of those pieces fall into it so that inevitably it doesn't matter what it is. Because again, I always talk about forward-facing policies as someone who came onto this board, and I still don't understand how we have our policy set up. Like, it is still confusing to me. I want to be able to Google sustainability policy for Wayne County and find it, and not, Ms. Kushner, you're talking about this. I don't want to be referred to. Well, no, the migration is cleaning that up, so it's not another meeting. The staff knows that that is part of the cleanup, because we had a lot of referrals to policies. We no longer say, refer to these 10 policies at the bottom to get here. So it's not another meeting. We have began, but I don't want to start a trend again of referring people back to 5 other policies. Like, go here for facilities, go here for academics. That's what I mean, which is what we used to do forward.
And our apologies. I think this was sort of a side conversation we'd had about just finding things via Google on the websites.
Now, I can find our policies if I use the right name. I don't go to our website, I just Google it.
Well, we don't necessarily know it, and the public may not necessarily know how it's.
And oftentimes I'll pull up a policy that's changed or outdated because it's on one school's website and hasn't been updated to our total one. So you can't always rely on Google.
Actually, you can. You just got to go to our website, not schools.
First. Okay. All right. So we're getting off topic.
You go
Going
to a
back to
school,
this
it's a
one, then it sounds like we would like to keep this in the same area of policy code, and that 1820, even if we expand or add more to this family of policies, this area of policy, we would keep that number for now? Okay. All right. So then based on this, based on all the input and feedback we had from the May meeting, what's everyone's comfort level with bringing this to the board for first reading?
Tonight?
No, it would come at the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay? All right.
I still don't like that we are, the first three sentences are really good, and then we switch to environmental sustainable practices. So I still don't, I would lose that whole sentence that.
Which
The first three
ones?
sentences are really good.
Okay.
Or the first two. The policy establishes a framework and decision-making priorities for environmentally sustainable practices.
That's a good point.
That-
Academics would not be part of it.
Right. So the first couple of sentences, I guess it's 2 long sentences, kind of lay out the policy, say the sustainability policy. The establishes framework for environmentally sustainable practices separates that from budget and academics and student assignment and everything else. And I don't particularly I like that as work, but I don't like that written into that first sentence.
Okay, so
If that makes sense.
let me offer this. What if we just divided this into 2 policies? One was sustainable operations and one was like the sustainability vision.
That's what I first said. Like, why don't we just name it sustainability or whatever Wake Tech has? And I sent that to everybody. Wake Tech has
Well, okay.
facility operations.
So,
right?
but I guess, then I misunderstood. I thought
Yeah.
you wanted to hold off on the whole policy until a whole new policy for the vision and all these other areas was included.
No. That's why I said we could rename this
Okay.
to facilities.
Yeah.
And that goes forward, and then we're working on the other sustainability policy.
Okay.
But if you want one umbrella one, I would lose that last sentence in the first paragraph if this was the umbrella policy,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
So I'm slow, I'm still
No, that's
processing,
good.
but
It's
everybody,
a lot.
you all might be on the same page. What if people think about Mr. Hershey's suggestion?
Could
Rob?
we reword it to say that the policy also, instead of
That's fine,
pigeonholing
too.
it?
But yeah, I mean, I'm open to that too. And so I don't want it, like you said,
I think adding also allows for that in there, and for people that are looking for this particular environmental sustainable piece, it's there, but it doesn't stop us from. I think that's a compromise.
So this policy also establishes, that's what we're saying?
yeah, I mean, sure.
Is
Add
that,
the
no,
word also
I'm
there.
asking, is that your suggestion? Okay.
I think that'll work.
Okay. Looking around, you all good with that?
Julie's listening, so she's
Okay.
capturing all of it.
If you see her doing this, let us know.
So the idea would be to lose the last sentence. in
No,
the-
we're adding a word to
Also.
it.
Oh, okay.
Adding the word also between this policy and establishes a framework.
But Dr. Taylor, that was a lot to keep up with in like a 90-second discussion.
Okay. Seeing some general nods. All right then, so I'll ask again, with Mr. Hershey's addition, Ms. Mahaffey's addition, it's prompted by Mr. Hershey. Our-
With assistance
and
by Ms.
assistant from Ms. Caulfield. We'll get everybody on the stat sheet in the box for. Do we have a general agreement to bring this as amended to first reading, not tonight's meeting, but at the next business meeting?
Yes.
Good?
And I think that gives the community time to give us some feedback over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And again, this isn't the end of the journey.
Right.
But it gets us on our way.
Yeah. It's a
All
good
right.
first step.
All right, Mr. Burnett, Mr. Strickland, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on, we now turn to a presentation on the SRO survey data. Dr. Robinson, Mr. Scott, Juan Cuartes.
Good, sir?
We're good.
All right. Thank you all for this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Myself and Dr. Robinson and Mr. Cortez are here to bring you some information item on the School Resource Officer Program evaluations. Just for some background reminder, we do per the MOU, an evaluation over the program, and what you're going to get today are the end of the year evaluations from, I don't want to steal too much of Mr. Cortez's thunder, but it'll be what you're going to get is information from the SRO evaluating our school administrators, and the reverse of that, the school administrators have filled out an evaluation on their SRO, and then we put that together, and that's what we're bringing you this information on today. And we'll be happy to take questions as we go or at the end. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Cortez to give you the initial data, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and thank you to the board for this time and the opportunity to be here in front of you to do an overview on the RSR program. To Mr. Scott's point, per the MOU, we have 2 different sets of feedback sessions. There are 2 that are due annually, so at the end of every semester we have one that's part of one feedback. The one that we're reviewing today is the overview for the whole year for the SRO program. So it includes surveys that are sent to our schools and our SRO partners, and they're divided into 2 different categories. So a little kind of overview of what we'll do today is we're going to do an overview of the SRO program as of today. We'll review the survey, not only the survey itself, but also the result that we received from it, the evaluation process, and again, we'll have some time for questions at the end. So starting with the overview, and I'll drill down more into the numbers here in a little bit, but overall we have 11 agencies throughout the county that participate in this program that provide an SRO to one or many of our schools. That is a total of 77 SRO positions that we have currently within the county, and with those, 80 schools are participating in that program. You can see the breakdown here from elementary, middle, and high. A little more context, especially on the elementary side of things. For those numbers, those are SROs that are shared within those jurisdictions. So we could have an SRO that has 2 or 3 schools that they service as part of their assignment to from that agency to our district. For high and middle, that's where you're going to start seeing 1 per school, or sometimes in some cases 2 per school, on the needs for that school. So again, those are the numbers for the overview of the SRO program that we have as of this year. You may see a change in the total number from 75 to 77. There's been an addition of 2 in one of our agencies, and again, those are to support our elementary schools in that jurisdiction. So to provide an overview of our survey. So the survey is deployed to schools and SRO agencies twice a year at the end of every semester. They receive emails and notifications from our office. So the method that we use is Google Forms. So it's a digital form where they provide that feedback to us. The results are monitored live. So we have a live form that every day we monitor just to not only see what we're getting, but also identify the needs for immediate action or immediate escalation for based on that feedback. There are 8 different categories on both surveys that are both quantitative and qualitative. So we provide them with the opportunity to rate their level of agreement with certain statements from the evaluation from 1 through 5. 1 disagreeing, 5 strongly agreeing with that statement. And they also have an opportunity to provide qualitative data as far as their experience with the SRO program overall. And then at the end of once the deadline is over, then we review those results, and they are both reviewed with law enforcement leaders as well as district leaders, depending on the type of the survey. So, as I mentioned before, there are 2 different surveys. One is provided to the staff at the school. Staff in this case is admin staff, so we're looking at APs and principals that have that direct relationship with the SRO. And then the other part is, so in this survey, the staff is evaluating the SRO, their performance, their engagement with students. So these are the 8 categories that we have for that survey, ranges from whether or not they're being a good role model for the students, the interactions they have with the staff, reporting safety concerns to the staff, and that's so this is just a summary of those statements. It's a full statement that we provide for the survey for them to evaluate the SRO. And on the other side, we also provide the SRO with that same opportunity where they're evaluating the school staff, again, meaning principals and APs. And all this is part of the MOU. So the questions are based on the MOU and the responsibilities that both parties have based on our complaint, our agreement. So jumping from the categories into more about the scores, and again, I'll drill down on the numbers a little bit more. So this one is showing us the school evaluation of the SRO. And as I mentioned before, this was 1 through 5. And as you can see here, 90% have a positive review of their SRO, where the overall score for their specific survey for their assigned SRO was between 4 and 5 level of agreement, which is agree or strongly agree with the statements that we provided in the survey. This is, again, drilling down a little bit more into the staff evaluating the SRO. What the score totals that you see here are per category. So you're seeing the average totals for each category for all the schools that participate in the survey, which is all the schools that participate in the SRO program. So as you can see, some of the high scores that we have here is from the role model, referring concerns to school staff, referring safety concerns to staff. And again, this is using the same metric of 1 through 5. Here we're shifting more towards the survey that the SRO receives, where they're then evaluating and providing feedback on the school staff. 90% of them provided positive feedback on the school staff and their relationship, again, based on those statements or categories that we showed earlier. And again, that 9% is a total score in all those categories where it was scored from 4 to 5 level of agreement with those statements or the evaluation categories. And we're doing the same drill down of each category, the average totals for those categories based on those responses. Again, some of the house numbers that we can see there's a relationship with the staff, providing a suitable working area, feeling supported by the staff. Again, we're using the same scores. And to emphasize, these are the quantitative, we also provide qualitative options for them to provide feedback, and that is considered when we do the final review. That's also provided to both sides when the evaluation is being prepared and presented to them. So overall, we went through the type of surveys, the categories that we're evaluating, the data that we received from those surveys for this school year. The other part of it is the evaluation. So we receive the scores, and then we present that to the leaders on both sides, whether it's the sergeant overseeing the SRO program, or the school principal, or air superintendent, depending on which survey it is. Data analytics. This year we did everything virtually, so we were able to provide the data that we have here. Everything else was done in past years, but this one is digital. So we do data analytics on those, and then provide, and then start looking at trends and trends of improvement or any need for attention or action that we have there. And then we also review the questions. So the questions that we have right now are being used based on the MOU, or we're also going to changes just based on what's relevant to the school, what's relevant to the SRO, what's relevant to the program as it is today. So that's how we evaluate not only the results of the survey itself to make sure that it stays relevant. And that's it for me today. So I'll be happy to take any questions at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cortez. I have a couple questions just to start us off. So this is the first time I've seen the school evaluation, the SROs, and then the SRO feedback about the schools. I mean, this is something that we've talked about in our contracts. I guess the individual contracts, but then the more general MOU development that we have with law enforcement. What kind? It's good to get this feedback. What kind of role or what kind of meaning do you think this evaluation has in SRO assignment to specific officers to specific schools?
So per the MOU, SRO assignments are based on the agency discretion.
Yeah.
However, there's a clause there that provides us with the opportunity to provide that feedback. So what I've seen in the 8 months that I've been here is that when we receive this result, we share that with leadership at those agencies. And that helps them make those decisions on the assignments, or understanding the culture of that particular school to know who could be the best fit for them from an SR perspective. So that's the value that I see right from an SRO side. Again, it's up to the agency, but we do have the opportunity to provide that feedback for them pre, post, or during the selection process.
I appreciate that. And I remember that was a big sticking point. Mr. Scott?
If I give you just some more context from my time up here, 18 years now, I've probably sat on just about every agency's selection committee they'll allow it to happen. So, for example, when an agency may call us and say, hey, we're looking to select a high school SRO or maybe a middle school SRO. Would you like to sit on the process? They'll do a board interview, and if they ask, we will supply one of our people. In the past, I did all of them and would sit on the actual panel making the selection, because we feel like it's valuable to have somebody from not only the school system, but sometimes I've seen it done two ways. Sometimes it'll just be someone from the security office, which is typically me, or I would implore them to say, hey, if you're looking to do this, why don't we get a high school principal or an AP and sit on the panel? And a lot of times the panel will consist of myself, a school administrator, one of their internal police department personnel, and we would be making the selection, or at least weighing in on the selection. Ultimately, as Juan said, the selection's up to them, but every panel I've sat on, my word is very heavily weighted on if I'd say, no, we don't see those people. So it gives, I think it's a true partnership of allowing us to have some word. In the early days, we never had that. It was just, here's the SRO, and then we got what we got. And so I think previous boards, I think it was probably 2 iterations ago, really pushed for that, and agencies, surprisingly, were actually very receptive to it.
And Mr. Chair, I would say that when you look at all the feedback, evaluation by the SRO of the school and vice versa, I mean, they absolutely line up when we see there's a disconnect, and so that allows us to be proactive in how we assign people. Don't know what it's been like in the past, but everything that I've seen since I've been here with this particular process, I think is absolutely going to make sure that SROs are positively embedded in schools, and there's that cohesiveness between them, the administration, teachers, and kids. So data plays that out when I look at it.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I appreciate that feedback as well. One last question that I had was just, it was a few years back, it was before you had joined us. Mr. Scott remembers it well. We had an extensive survey of staff, of students, and then also the community. Over 54,000 people participated, just sort of in getting additional evaluation, and that was more of the SRO program in general. But I thought it was really revealing to get a lot of those, attitudes, issues that people might have brought up. Do you see any way in future evaluations there could be a student or parent feedback that could be part of the evaluation that could be submitted as well?
So let me take that one. After we did that big one, we realized we needed to have that window open all the time and not make it just hey, we're just going to ask once a year, see what you think. So those windows of opportunity are always open. They're on our website. You can go to them now, fill out. There's a myriad of ways, really, that they could provide feedback on the SRO process. Not only do we have that Google form that's there, occasionally, it's rare, but occasionally they can email me direct, call my office direct. Our tip line sometimes will take in information about SROs, but right after we did that big survey, as you can remember, one of the things that we took away with it, my predecessor and I, was like, we don't need to just ask this one time and put a 1 week or 2 week window, say, hey, what do you think, and then close and move on. So we've left that window open to take that feedback at any time if someone has something, because we're always looking to be receptive to take community feedback, the students' feedback, staff feedback, board's feedback, anyone that has it. I think it's incumbent on us to take that at any time and not just give folks this little narrow window of time with one way to do it. So those avenues are always open, and I implore people to let us know, because that's when we want to know when we need to take action.
All right, thank you. Go around to the board. Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, and thank you both for presenting this information to us. My question is very similar. Well, I have 2 questions, but my first one is very similar to yours, Chair Haggerty. And I'm wondering, is there also could be an opportunity for there to be QR codes that are displayed throughout the school building for teachers and staff to scan and provide that feedback, just in case they can't necessarily find it on the website, there's an opportunity for them to have it either in the front office, teachers can talk through it about their first couple of weeks of school, therefore it's present.
Absolutely, great suggestion. I think that, again, for me, I love hearing about how the program is, and the more ways that we can take in information, the better. But yeah, we'll definitely look at possibly getting some QR codes we can stick up so people can quickly, ready to take them straight to the link, fill out the form, send it to us when we get it.
Right, that's perfect. And then my second question, I was looking at the 8% of principals that scored their SROs less than 4 to 5%, and then the SROs, the 10% of the SROs that scored the principals and APs less than 3% or less than that, 3 to 9 and less than 3. Did they provide feedback on what they would like to see different? Because to me that's a little alarming that there's some concerns on both entities of the two parties. So what recommendations are being made, and are those potential SRO officers going to different schools that may be better fit for them?
Absolutely. So a couple things. When you do these, it does the beauty of this is it will let us know. Typically, we're going to know ahead of time if there's an actual problem. But when we do see those, we take action immediately. Don't wait until the end of the year to do this. That's why we continually monitor the progress of how the program is working. To your point of, when we do find an issue, if you would say that, we'll take it straight to the agency. Let them know that we're monitoring this. If they feel like there needs to be a change, it's not been a lot of instances where we've had to make a change. Usually it's just a personality conflict, and then it's just the talking to the communication is key in those cases, and usually it smooths out and we're fine. But I think the number one thing is that we stay with our SRO coalition that meets every month. That gives us a pulse of finding out what's going on in our schools, and if an SRO sergeant or supervisor has an issue, they don't have to wait, but we do have at least a check-in every month that gives us a way to kind of touch base with our folks and know what's going on in the program.
And is that also shared with the principals as well, that they can give their input? Or
what principals typically do is they have an assigned security administrator. If there was an issue, for example, their first step is to contact them. They let us know, and then we go straight to them. So, and the MOU is pretty clear on it. There's a conflict between an SRO and a principal that is to be elevated. Once it's elevated, we discuss the situation. It comes back down for the solution. And to your other question about in the survey, there is a area for them to allow comments, so they can put. We have the survey is broken into two pieces. So we've got our quantitative piece that gives us all these numbers, and we have our qualitative piece. There are all these comments, and that's really where you get the rubber meets the road. What's going on behind an actual score, and they've been very transparent right out what that is.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Additional questions, additional comments? Ms. Rice, then Ms. Evans, and then Ms. Caulfield.
Thanks. Great surveys with the information that you're having, with a lot of agreeing or close to almost strongly agreeing. So it's nice.
Make everybody happy.
It's right, but it's okay. It's good stuff to see. So really I'm glad that this is working out in some areas. So I just really have about 2 questions too, just to look at it a little further. I was just curious, kind of along the lines about surveying again. Have we decided, or have we done in the past, I'm not sure, about surveying our students around their mental health well-being with having an armed officer on campus or in the schools? I'm looking to see how students kind of feel with having an armed officer
Are you
on
asking
school
me?
grounds.
Are you asking me, have we asked that specific question of students?
Yeah, like if we done a survey, I know that we were just talking about, we surveyed the 54,000 people. What Mr. Haggerty was kind of along the lines of bringing up. I'm trying, because I think that it's really good. We do need to know if it's working with principal and SROs, but I think, to me, some of the people that's most affected are the students that are in the school. how are they seeing SROs working for them? Because we really want them to feel like, for instance, for some people, it may not be enough SRO in the school, and they may feel, hey, I would like to see a couple more people walking around and being a little bit more engaged and knowing that our grounds are safe. And then some may feel like, well, honestly, when I see them, it makes me nervous, depending on what school population or school area that they may come from. There are certain different levels of emotional feelings with that. And so I was just curious about what expansion of surveying have we done around that emotional well-being space with having an armed person on campus.
I would imagine we haven't done that. I could be wrong.
So they have on it's on our website now. Any person, student, staff, anybody can go there. And there has been a couple kids that have gone there and put in some small amount of data about the SRO program. That came after, as Chair Haggerty mentioned, we did the big one. We wanted to make sure we had this vehicle that anyone could go to. There's a lot of information where I say, hey, if you're a student, if you're a parent, and you want to provide feedback on it, go here. And there's a survey there that they can fill out and put that. And we modeled it right after this. There's a data piece of quantitative stuff, and then a open comment. They could say whatever they want to. We got a few.
So what I think is that we can be more intentional in that regard and not necessarily go by what we think we feel. I can tell you that over the past 3 decades, I've completely seen the nature of how SROs are engaged in buildings by students. And so for the most part, it's positive now. But that's me going by the hairs on the back of my neck. I don't have any empirical data to tell me that. So I think that's a good thing we can engage on to know absolutely where they are.
And
The intentionality of the ask is can be created, and Kendrick and I can get together and we can make sure that we can include it moving forward. So,
I really think, I like the idea that Mr. Swanson put out this. I think as students, if you're a kid in the hallway and you're walking down the hall and there's a QR code sitting on the wall, you can more quickly get to it than, even though the same form is out there, but I really like that idea that they can quickly ding and hit it. And that may actually get us some more of the feedback that we're
And so my other question is, I know that historically, the SROs were particularly there around drug use and weapons, right, that may be on schools. So I was wondering, do we have any data around what the SROs have actually, where their actions have been within the school? Because while I think that it's great that we can say, oh, it's great that they're there and all, I think those things are very, very helpful. What we saw today, that we know the relationships are working well. But I guess if we're looking at safety and we're looking at in the improvements of that safety, what are the target things that's actually happening with the SROs? Is it that they're confiscating maybe more drugs? Are they confiscating more guns at the school or stopping it or whatever? What actions are they actually participating in that we're seeing an improvement in our safety process and protocol? And if we do have any of that data, is there any way for community to see it or for us to see it?
We'll absolutely bring it forward. We will definitely bring it forward to you.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
And if I can, just to build on what Ms. Rice is saying, in the original survey, there were kind of more general questions, but there were questions. You think WCPSS students are treated appropriately by the SRO in your school?
Yeah.
Do you think SROs create a welcoming environment at your school, right?
Yeah.
But they were kind of general, but there was also focus groups, and those let the researchers kind of dive more deeply. And so as Dr. Robinson works with Mr. Scott, I don't know if there's access to those focus group questions, but this was only a few years ago. That could be a good place to kind of look for those questions that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And dig deeper without having to.
Yeah, I would love to see that, or for community to have access, and for me to have access to see. And then just the honestly final thing around, is it even a possibility for us to incorporate even Peace Builders programs or other people with community that will work in conjunction or also still be at the school, not taking away the SRO, but maybe have other safety people there that works a little bit different, so that when we dive through that data and see which students it does affect, which students it don't affect, are there other possibilities or ways for students to engage with someone that makes them feel safe that may not necessarily be a police officer. And that's the point that I'm making, right? Because, I mean, we all understand where we are in our society today, and sometimes with some students and some populations, I can feel more safe, or I can share more information about what might be going on in school, other than someone who can't directly arrest me or make me feel uncomfortable in order for me to share something that may keep everyone else safe that I might know. And so, because we know that officers have to do their job and their duty, but sometimes in some communities, having an officer there itself invokes a certain level of anxiety and stress and fear in reality. So that's just something to think about when we dig into that a little bit more. So I would
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And there's some other things, too, I can share with you, too, after the meeting that's very much in line with what you're talking about, too.
Okay.
And I think that'll help move this conversation along, too.
Perfect.
Yeah. Did I say Ms. Coffin or Ms. Evans? Ms. Evans, then Ms. Coffin.
Thanks. If you said this, I apologize, I missed it. Did you get 100% participation? Because you say you've got 80 schools and 77 SROs, so you did have 100%?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
The only difference that we saw with the SRO was reassignments or vacancies that were there before. So as far as the vacancies, we had new SROs that were not added but were assigned. So those may have not participated because they were assigned the last month. But for the ones that were present during the year, yes, we had 100% of votes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Coffin.
So that was my number 2.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My number 1 was who does the surveys?
Who completes them?
Yeah.
So for the SRO side, it's going to be the SRO, the security, the law enforcement officer that's assigned as an SRO to that school. For the staff at the school, it's either the principal or the AP that's assigned for security and safety. So it's a member of the leadership staff at the school.
Okay, so this isn't involving like teachers or staff, it's just administration and SROs?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Caulfield. Dr. Ng, and then Ms. Mahaffey.
I just want to piggyback with Ms. Rice's comment. I like the idea of having other folks besides SROs being involved in kind of that building that community at the school. I don't want to take away from the role of the SRO in building a positive relationship with the students as well, right? That's important for them to have that sense of trust as well. So whatever we can do should be additive to what the SROs are doing and keep the SROs, efforts to build a positive relationship.
Thank you. Ms. Mahaffey?
So, question that I may have missed, this is going to be an annual survey sent out to schools?
Similar. Twice a year.
Okay.
For the
Because-
survey is twice a year. For the review, which is the whole year, is once a year. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Because I know we, Ms. Johnson Hostler and I had schools in our district that just added SROs at the elementary level. We found out about this because we heard from a parent that this was being added rather than from the district. So can we work on that communication so when that happens, we're finding out from the district rather than a parent who got an email from?
Yep.
Okay.
Meaning when a new SRO is added.
Yes, especially when they were not in our elementary schools.
There were no elementary schools.
There was not one.
In this municipality, and now there are 2 covering their elementary schools. So it's new for families in that area.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I have a thought, and then I'm going to make a motion for us to go to closed session. All my questions were asked, fortunately, and this is just my plug that, please, if we're going to add them, we should know. But most importantly, back to Mrs. Rice's point, which we've talked about Peace Builders before. We've run programs in our schools where we've had adults do programs that we didn't call Peace Builders. My personal preference now that we have 2 more elementary schools coming online, we are missing a window of opportunity to pilot these programs in elementary, so law enforcement won't feel the need to start in elementary. Because guess what? If we normalize Peace Builders or program in elementary, guess what they're ready for by the time they get to high school? They know that this is the system of accountability and support. So that's my plug for, since we're moving SROs in elementary, I'd like for us to actually take this as an opportunity to say, we know exactly how to start a pilot program. Because if we're at 14, I mean, we're moving quickly. We had 2 elementary schools come online a week ago. So that's my plug. Now, go ahead. Yes, you can respond.
Just really quickly, just keep in mind the context of that number of 14 is not 14 SROs.
Yes, we know.
Okay, yeah, that's what
Well,
I mean.
actually, you should make, that is true, sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody might not know that.
Clarify
We
that.
have a district where we do,
Yes.
but everybody else might not know that. So that's a good point. So to that point, for instance, the officer in our 2 elementaries are shared, 1 officer, 2 elementaries.
Or in some cases, it may be one that's covering like the entire jurisdiction.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, any final thoughts on SROs and the SROs survey? If not, thank you, Mr. Scott, thank you, Mr. Court. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all right. Now, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we, which I was going to pull it up and read it like you, but I can't pull it up that quick. But I will move that we go into closed sessions for all of the notes noted in our work session, I mean, our board, I don't have, why do I have to need board meetings?
Second.
Sorry about that. For all the things noted in our crises.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Johnson, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, a second from Mr. Hershey. All in favor of moving into closed session for the reasons stated on our Tracy agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll give the room a minute to, we'll give a minute for the room to clear. Yeah, let's do the bring backs first.